I'd like to call to order the City of Littleton City Council virtual study session meeting. This is the third budget review meeting. It is September 24, 2020, 6 p.m. or 1800. All council members are present except for Council Member Milliman. She'll be joining us just a little bit late. But tonight, Council, we have two items on our agenda. The first item we're going to take on is ID number 20-243. It's the CARES Act update that we will receive from staff. And Council, we will give direction regarding the use of the CARES Act funds. So that is our purpose here tonight on this item. So with that, I'll turn it over to the City Manager.
All right, Mayor. Thank you. Good evening, Council. So I think this is, I believe, our third discussion around the CARES Act and appropriation of funds here. So we have a couple of issues to check in on just in time that are pretty important we talk about this evening. So with that, I think I'm just going to turn it over to Ashley Bolton and Tiffany Hooten to carry the conversation.
Good evening, Council. We're having a slight technical difficulty, but Tiffany will have the presentation pulled up here momentarily. So tonight, I think we wanted to give you a recap of all of the funds that we've spent to date in the previous 3 rounds that we've come before over the past. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Sorry, we're getting an echo in the room. And as well as bring up additional asks for round 4 that we'll jump into detail on. How are we doing? Yep. Okay.
All right, so good evening, Council. We do have a presentation prepared for you. So we're gonna go ahead and just go through this. So the purpose this evening is to ask for support from Council to move forward with our Phase 4 CARES Act use of funds. We have a couple of recommended actions. The total of these actions is $205,000. $100,000 is related to cloud storage and scanning, and $105,000 is related to some website assessment and designing planning, the Council Chambers voting system, and then a Gartner Executive Partner subscription, and then some Weekends on Main equipment. So again, I just want to provide kind of a background. The CARES Act was provided to multiple jurisdictions of 500,000 population or more. Littleton is receiving $4.4 million from Jefferson County and Arapahoe County. Those counties are both custodians of the funds, so they have fiduciary reporting responsibilities. And then they also have the determination on final eligible expenditures. And both counties do have defined reporting requirements. And just to kind of give you guys an update, we have been reporting on a monthly basis to both of the counties throughout the use of the CARES Act funds. So when we first started talking about the CARES Act, we talked about having a phasing plan. And, you know, at that time, we really didn't know how many phases we would have. So we're now on Phase 4. And we do actually anticipate that there will likely be another phase in October. And then we'll certainly come back to Council in November and December with some final information related to the use of those funds. So this just kind of gives you a background. So on May 19th, the county intergovernmental agreements were approved with both Arapahoe County and Jefferson County. We had our first discussion on Phase 1 on May 26th. In July, we had multiple sessions related to approving the appropriation for the expenditure of the CARES Act funds, and then a Phase 2. Which primarily was related to business grants. And then in August, we had a couple of other discussions as well related to business and nonprofit grants, and then a Phase 3 in August 18th. So we've had multiple discussions related to CARES Act as we've gone through the year 2020. So this slide here just kind of gives you an overview and kind of a summary of where we were and where we are today. We just wanted to share with you and kind of remind you what was included in Phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so if you just kind of look through these, you know, the majority of the expenditures have been related to business grants and nonprofit grants. And then we've got a number of other projects that we've gone throughout the months since May. And so we've had some phone system upgrades, which those have already been implemented and are working. We've had a number of laptops and other peripherals related to that to allow people or employees to work remotely. We had the Weekends on Main program, and so we are continuing that. And then the second largest expenditure of CARES Act funds is related to the council chamber redesign. We came to council and requested $990,000 originally. And then we wanted to include a phase 2 of that, or redesign phase 2 of about $410,000. And I'm happy to report that that project is actually underway, and you're probably aware of that. So they have moved forward. We've gotten everything approved and going from the county and going forward. So they are starting on that. We have a number of security additions and improvements, definitely some Wi-Fi improvements that we're working on. We would like to have a program, and council supported this the last time we came to you, to allow remote working for employees, to provide them some office setup. We want to make sure that we're aware of any potential workers' comp claims. So we want to be able to offer some ergonomic setup for employees who are working remotely. We talked about our unemployment costs and how COVID is affecting the unemployment cost to the city. And so that's definitely reimbursable through the CARES Act. And then some of the most recent ones are the ones that we're going to be talking about tonight are the website assessment, the chamber voting system, the Gartner subscription, Weekends on Main, and then some additional cloud storage and scanning. So if you kind of look at the phases, overall, we were receiving $4.4 million. We have allocated $3.9 million roughly. So we've got about $500,000 left that we will be coming to council likely in November or October. Sorry, I don't know what month I'm in. We'll be coming to you in October to kind of look at what some of those expenses are and what we will suggest that we use for those. And again, just a reminder, currently under the provisions that are provided by the federal government, all of these expenditures have to be spent by December 30th. There's been some discussions that might change, but it hasn't as of yet. So some of the fiscal impacts, we kind of went over this. 4.4 million, phase 1 was 1.2 million, phase 2 was 1.5, phase 3 was about $1 million, and then the ask tonight is 205,000. So that leaves about 514,000 available. So tonight, the policy question that we have before you is, does council support moving forward with phase 4 CARES Act use of funds? And I mentioned we have two categories. One is to facilitate compliance, 100,000. And then we have a number of other programs, projects for 105,000. And I think with that, I would like to hand it over to Ashley, and she can talk about what each of these programs and projects are.
Thank you, Tiffany. The first one is around cloud storage and scanning, and I think you guys have heard on our budgeting discussions previously, and I've had Keith Reister and Jennifer Henninger mention one of these projects that we embarked on as soon as COVID hit, where we were able to take some of our furloughed projects or furloughed personnel and create a win-win in terms of creating a scanning project where we really started to make a dent in terms of all of the volumes of paper that we've accumulated over the decades. In combination with that, one of the effects is that we've been burning through our local storage here. And while we had planned next year to look at a project to create our future state in terms of storage and move to more affordable, scalable, cost-effective storage, especially as we're embarking on basically body cam coming up in 2023 and that becoming a reality for us, which we know takes a lot of storage. We're finding a need now to accelerate that plan, to evaluate our storage plan, as well as to help give us some cushion in terms of all of the storage that we have, I'll say, burned through since April, and knowing that we are continuing this project through the rest of Q4, we'll continue to take up more storage. So this ask is for $100,000 to help us actually look at the future storage plan of what types of storage we're going to need and which types of documents can go on which types of storage. A lot of that actually pertains to retention policies, as well as how quickly we need access to some of those, because the cost of storage really comes at a price in the sense that cheaper storage typically means you can't access those documents as quickly. And so for some of our older kind of archives, that may be fine, but for documents that we're using pretty much every day, we want to make sure we're looking at the proper type of storage. And this really fits into CARES Act again, because we're really taking all of that paper and truly trying to digitize it and getting closer to our goal of one day, as I think Keith talked about at our last budget meeting, of being able to click on a parcel, for example, and finding every piece of information, whether it be a permit or a police report or any documentation that we have regarding to that property or parcel. And consequently, that takes the effort of turning all of that paper into digitized documents, and this is an ask towards that. Any questions on that?
We do have one question already, and I do want to recognize that Councilmember Milliman has joined us during the presentation. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, thanks, ladies. Great presentation. You know, in our phase one, we gave out approximately 625,000 in business grants. Do we have any plans to use the additional 500,000 to use any of those funds for additional grants for businesses?
You know, I think internally we still have a number of projects that we haven't been able to get to. And, you know, when we prioritized the last time we came to council, we weren't sure how much money we might have left after this phase. So at this point, I feel like there is a number of items internally that we could potentially use those funds for. And so right now, we don't have any plans for that. The one thing that we do have is during the nonprofit grant program that we instituted in the last phase, there was an additional 39,000 that's available. And so with council support, we would like to go ahead and move forward with allocating that 39,000 to some additional nonprofit organizations. And again, that's with council support because we didn't pay out that full 200,000 that we had allocated.
Mark, would you like to add?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Denise Stevens is here to maybe brief the council on the success here we had for our phase 3. As Tiffany was sharing with you, we do have some left over on the nonprofit. And if council is okay, we would like to re-advertise that and see if we can't find some funding here for the balance of those funds through the nonprofits. We do have several business, for-profit businesses that applied here in the last round for which we were not able to fund in its entirety. So I would like, if council's okay, permission to go ahead and use some of the balance of the 500,000 to go ahead and pay for those that have applied and qualified. So Mayor, if you're okay, I'd like Denise just to recap the status of that business group.
You bet. Can we bring the council back up, or do you have slides? There we go. Thank you.
Good evening, council. We've had quite a bit of success. And I also wanted to mention that, and maybe you're not aware, that Arapahoe County had originally made their funds available to the unincorporated areas, but we pretty successfully advertised Littleton's interest in this, and they have awarded almost 500,000 of their CARES Act funds to our Littleton businesses. So if you take what we've awarded in our 3 phases plus the county, we're talking about $1,304,720 to businesses. So we're doing pretty well there. However, as Mark mentioned, we were able to determine that the number of eligible candidates for the Business Recovery Act, it totaled $562,812. And as you know, we were only given $375 to cover that. So we would need to add a little bit to that to cover those eligible applicants. And then also the 39,000 that remains, we would like to re-advertise that to nonprofits with your permission so that we could get that money paid out.
Patrick, did you still have additional questions there?
No, that's answers my my question. Thank you. I'm glad we're still trying to help out our businesses as best we can.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Elrod.
Ashley, on the cloud storage, the 100,000, what does that cover? Is that just planning for it? Does that build capacity? What exactly is covered?
We're estimating, Karina, that a quarter of it would probably be used for the actual planning. And then 3/4 of it would be put towards our future actually cloud footprint. We've been, basically with the scanning, we've focused on our construction documents early on and are looking at how we can try to shuffle those around and most effectively use the existing storage we've got, but start going towards that cloud storage footprint that we want to get to that'll provide us more scalability and cost effectiveness. So hoping that 3/4 of it will be going towards the cloud storage and actually using that for a lot of our digitized documents.
And that also sets up the platform for future storage. So we're building the infrastructure now that we can just add to in the future. So the
Exactly.
incremental cost later will be lower.
Exactly.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Good. All right, we have no other questions. So Mark, City Manager, would you like us to just go ahead and address it as just one direction? And so I don't see any council member wanting to break it up.
I think whatever suits the council. We've in the past gone through line item by line item here, but I certainly would like direction on both the business grant as well as the nonprofit. Make sure council's okay with going ahead and completing the funding there for business grant and re-advertising nonprofit. And then we have, of course, the presentation here just on the cloud storage. So those are really the first three issues here I'm asking for direction.
So the cloud was the other one. Okay, cool. All right. We have Councilmember Elrod.
I think you addressed the question I was going to ask. So we're just talking about the business, the nonprofits, and compliance. We're still going. We'll then talk about other.
Correct.
On the business grants, I talked to a few businesses and there was some confusion on whether they should apply or not because they thought it was the Arapahoe County CARES grant. So Denise, can you remind me the qualifications or disqualifications if they had gotten a previous Littleton grant or if they've gotten a Arapahoe County grant? So tell me again the qualifications.
We actually will look at any application, even those that include relief from other programs, both federal and county and our programs. What we do is we look at the new presentation of economic injury, and then we add in all of the amounts that they've received from other resources. And then if that injury still exceeds what awards they've received so far, then they still qualify for the difference. So all businesses should apply because we have a way to calculate anything else that they've gotten based against their economic injury. And if they still have economic injury remaining, then they are still eligible for funding.
So if we were to open this up to businesses, we're actually not opening it up to new applications. We're just going to fulfill those that were submitted. So if there was confusion by a business of whether or not they could apply, at this point, they would not be able to.
Well, it's up to you, but that would probably be my suggestion because we do have several in the queue that equal a fairly sizable amount of money that would have already qualified.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? Nope. Okay. Councilmember Fay.
I would like to toss out the possibility that was kind of brought up that we consider the three different pathways of giving money separately. I, for one, am not in favor of giving more money to businesses because I know of a number of businesses who have changed their business model and are now succeeding even better than they did before the pandemic. I would expect a business owner to be a fairly sophisticated person and to be able to do that. And so rather than encouraging dependency upon grants, I would much rather encouraging them to do what they need to do to adapt to the times, because we're pretty sure right now, I think, that the times are not going to snap back to the way they were before. All done.
Thank you. Okay, so right now we are on the business grants. The council members, do you have any other comments you want to make on business grants? Councilmember Elrod.
Thank you, Carol. I actually appreciate that comment. So would we, instead of giving the business whatever, sorry, let me start again. So the option that's being presented to us right now is for those businesses that applied under the current program to essentially fulfill that. What Carol is mentioning to me could sound like a potential for a separate business grant. I'd be supportive of a separate business grant that rewards innovation or right learning how to pivot and helping them invest or to acknowledge that they have invested money to be successful. So I think that is a very fair and equitable approach, and I think it does provide that kind of, as Carol said, like, celebrate that and reward that as well. So I guess I'm saying I would not be in favor of this if we are equipped to provide a different type of incentive.
Okay, any other council comments? And I just want to understand the process, make sure we all understand the process. This will come back to us, what is that, on the 6th, where we give the actual approval?
Well, Mayor, I'd request that if I got enough consensus here at this meeting, I just would proceed, and then we could formally do this on the 6th. But I would like pretty clear direction this evening on what to do with it.
Yeah, direction tonight, but we formally approve it on the 6th. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, cool, thank you. Council Member Grove.
I would support re-advertising the 39,000 for nonprofits, and then if the second advertisement doesn't yield enough applications, and then consider rolling that over into some other project. How would we deal with the fact that we advertised one way for these $180,000 worth of applications that have been vetted, and then are we suggesting that we save that money for a pivot kind of allocation, or that we do this and then with the remaining money look at something with innovation? Because I'm with Karina and Carol, I like the innovation idea. So maybe that's a question for Denise.
Well, it's definitely up to all of you. One thing I will let you know, I don't know if you remember, we worked with Inglewood on an enterprise zone contribution sponsorship program, and we've gotten a very small amount of money, but we are about to advertise that. This is private contribution that will win the contributors a 25% tax credit through the state. And the basis of that one is a little bit like what Carol and Pam were talking about, that if you've invested money to expand operations, obviously making more money because you've expanded operations, if you've invested in things like outdoor heaters or tables or chairs or anything, even service-based businesses, to accommodate in-person contact that is still with safety regulations, then you qualify for that grant. So we could certainly add to a new business grant some stipulations like that, that you've done things to innovate, to expand your business. We're certainly able to do that if that's your interest. What Mark was talking about was that we did have another probably 30 eligible applicants with the last grant, the 375,000, and we could go ahead and award that money, or we can amend it as you would like to include applicable uses for innovation.
Thank you, Councilmember Elrod, then Driscoll.
I have a follow-up question. How much is in that enterprise private fund right now?
Actually, right now only 1,900. So we're gonna.
Oh, it's small.
Yeah, it's very small.
And would you, just from a recommendation of viewpoint, and council may change their mind, but would you recommend the 187,000 go to the current applicants, or do you think that, and then another amount go to another of this 500,000 we have left, go to the pivot grant? Or, I mean, can you change in the middle is what I'm asking, you know?
Well, it's probably not wise to change in the middle. It's probably best idea to determine what you all would prefer, because then we'll structure it that way. If we change it, it becomes very confusing to the applicants.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Council, well, Karina, you lowered your hand. We'll go to Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, I appreciate what Karina and Carol have said, but again, I think we got to be cognizant of the staff time, and this is pretty well oiled now. They know what they're doing. They have their process down, and I would prefer just to keep moving through like we've been doing. And as Denise just said, not to confuse our businesses out there to add another level of qualifications that, frankly, I don't know how much crazier you can get. Heaters, tables, chairs. We get that. What else are they doing? I don't know. But I imagine most people are just taking the basic steps to increase business as best they can. But I'm in favor of keeping things the same.
One thing I also might add, just so that it's clear for all of you, we do ask for financial validation of economic injury. So far, those applicants that have been deemed eligible have very clearly provided information to us that they are still open, still doing their best to operate, but they are still doing less business than they did during the same period last year. So I would say they're all pretty valid applicants who are considered eligible that remain in that queue.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Fay, and then me.
Denise, some of the applicants got a grant, some of them didn't. Why didn't the ones get one that didn't get one?
We had to add another level of decision-making to the process because we had far too many applicants that were eligible. So what we did is we built a decision-making matrix that took into consideration what their economic injury was and how much of that injury had already been satisfied by other funds. So I believe it's 20% was their economic injury because we wanted it to be fairly level between larger businesses that had lost larger amounts and smaller businesses that had lost smaller amounts. And then we coupled that with what injury had already been satisfied by other means. And that's how we came up with, and it was pretty evenly across the board, smaller businesses and a few larger businesses that ultimately qualified with that additional decision-making process.
Then are you saying that the ones who haven't gotten a grant yet were less qualified than the ones who did?
No, not less qualified, just less qualified based on that additional criteria of 20% being granted to their the level of economic injury, and 80% being given to what has already been satisfied.
Okay, so you're not as qualified on one criterion.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And it'll be my turn, and then Councilmember Milliman. I'm okay with what we're proposing right now. I don't want to change in this phase. This is what staff has been working on. And I do believe we have just over $500,000 left still that we may be allocating funds to businesses. And I think it would be interesting to see some of the thoughts from council and to think about them more on the incentives for those that are succeeding. But I am satisfied for what we have for this round. We'll go to Councilmember Milliman.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you sound great.
So I would agree with Councilmember Driscoll and the mayor. I'm okay with keeping things the way they are as well. I know staff has worked really hard on this. And I think just the nature of the times, these businesses have been driven to be more creative. They have to in order to survive these rough waters that they're in. So I would support just keeping it as it is. And of course, I support the $39,000 going to nonprofits. And I hope that all of that money gets utilized by nonprofits. So thanks, Denise.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember Grove.
I just want to clarify, we have 187,000, which represents 30 applicants, which would come out of the 500,000 we have left for phase 4. Is that correct? So we wouldn't have another 500, we'd have another 500 minus 187.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay. So we're still on business grants, so we can talk about this all night, or we can go, if everybody's ready to make some decisions. Councilmember Elrod still has a question, but I know right now we have in favor of moving forward direction with what we have would be myself, as well as Councilmember Driscoll, Councilmember Milliman, and then we haven't heard from Mayor Pro Tem yet. Go ahead and chime in there, Scott.
Yeah, I guess my 2 cents is that I'm in favor of keeping it the way that it is. I think that staff has done a good job throughout the prior business grant funding of refining this process. I think that we've got it to a place where the decision-making is equitable and it's administratively manageable. I also think the point of this money is to help struggling businesses during a time when it's very understandable that businesses would be struggling. I don't think we're out of the woods by a long shot yet. This is triage money and I want it to be used for that. I think it's ironic to be passing along money to businesses that have been able to pivot and start innovating and for whatever reason, find a stride, be a little bit more successful, right? I understand the sentiment of wanting to do a good job of stewarding these public funds, but if we're giving it to the businesses that are most successful, I think that's not really the intent of the money. Different industries are going to have different opportunities to innovate and succeed. And that's wonderful. That's what we want. We want people coming out of these economic dark times. I don't think we pass the money along to those people. I think we pass it along to the businesses that are continuing to struggle. And I don't think that signifies in any way that they haven't done what they need to do as business people. I think, if you're a business owner in Littleton, a small business owner in particular, you've got so much skin in the game when it comes to your business. You're doing everything. I mean, these people are scrapping to make their businesses succeed. I think we give them a handout. So I'm in favor of keeping it the way that it is.
Thank you. Councilmember, you do have your hand up. You have a question?
I do have a question, but I'm going to comment on comment Scott made. So I personally am not suggesting that those businesses that are not succeeding are doing something wrong in their business. I want to clarify that comment that was not my intent at all. Quite the opposite. I think it's for businesses that are being successful and innovating. I think they are just as entitled. All businesses are essentially equal here. If we can make them even more successful, even better for our city and their surrounding businesses. My question is to Tiffany. You had stated when we just started this conversation that when Patrick asked why not to the businesses, you had said there were a number of projects in the city that were still unfunded. So I just, I'm hearing that, I'm sorry, Mark, I'm hearing from you that you are making a recommendation to support the remaining businesses, but I am hearing from Tiffany that I think she's saying she's not making that recommendation because there's a number of projects that are unfunded internally. Can you guys just kind of clarify your position on that?
Well, I think the council could wait and make a decision later. I'm specifically suggesting that we probably respond to this now since we've had a number of businesses make an application. And so I do believe this is the higher priority that council needs to really decide. It's your call. We could obviously delay this decision till later, but my suggestion is we probably act on it.
So Karina, where are you on this one? Yes, moving forward? No?
I'm yes for moving forward. I think it'll create confusion.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Grove?
I'm for moving forward as is with the 39
thank you.
and the program as is now.
Councilmember Fay?
I am not for moving forward as is.
Okay. All right, thank you. So Mark, you have your direction on the business grants.
I do, and we're going to go ahead and re-advertise for the balance of the nonprofit at $39,000. See what we get for applications.
Okay.
So with that, I have direction, Mayor, so we can proceed to the cloud storage and the balance of the discussion.
On the nonprofits,
Unless council has an objection, I would. It's already been allocated and approved by council. We would. I just wanted to reaffirm that you're okay just re-advertising and using the balance of the funds for its original purpose.
Are there any council members object to that? All right, so you have your direction on that. We're good on that. So now we're down to the cloud storage. Council, where do you want to go? Direction, or do we have any more discussion? Okay, I don't see any discussion. So is there anybody opposed to moving forward with this? Councilmember Driscoll, you do have a question.
Just want a clarifying question. You're asking for additional funds for cloud storage. And what was that number?
100,000.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Good. Council, was there anybody want to talk about it a little bit more, or can we move forward on that? Any objections? I see none. Okay, Mark, I think you have your direction on cloud storage.
Okay, Ashley and Tiffany, please proceed.
Great. Was there another one on that, Mark? I put down other.
Yeah, there's a list of other things there that staff is recommending. There are 105. It's kind of a list of miscellaneous issues there that staff will explain.
Yeah, let's cover that one more time if we could.
Yeah, so we do have 4 smaller projects that we are asking council for support to move forward for. And I'll let Ashley kind of touch on each of these.
So keeping in mind the December 30th deadline to use the CARES Act funds again, and knowing that we couldn't squeeze in an entire external website redesign, we tried to creatively think. Kelly Nardi and I have been partnering to try to come up with what we could get done this year using CARES Act monies. And we are asking for $30,000 to do a strategic assessment by a third party to come in and look at our existing website, but more importantly, I think take us to where we could go in the future with an eye towards really thinking about the various different audiences that we would really like to try to build a future website to help give a better user experience. And that would be catering more towards our small business owners, to our citizens, to prospective residents moving to the city, et cetera. So that's an ask for $30,000 to come up with an assessment and a design plan that we could execute in 2021 as we look towards trying to actually rebuild our existing website for the future. The next one is $15,000 for a new voting system. With the redesign of council chambers, Tyler Barton's been helping us do a lot of work investigating what is out there in terms of voting systems, and they've really come a long way. They're no longer just a light bulb with your guys' names on them. And so we've identified one that we think would work really well with our existing AV system and also help our city clerk actually keep better records of the votes. And that's an ask of $15,000. Knowing that as we've learned more about CARES Act and what we're allowed to spend things on, software subscriptions and other subscriptions are things that we have found out that are reimbursable through CARES Act. And with that, we'd like to ask for $30,000 for an executive partner subscription with Gartner. For those of you who aren't familiar with Gartner, they are a leader in technology research and advisory services. And just knowing the constant and I think really rapid change in terms of technology and how we've been forced to really change how our workforce works, as well as becoming more digital more quickly, having a partner like Gartner to help us research trends and give us advice and actually kind of become an extension to our administrative services and entire city team in terms of technology and additional things that we could look to do and plan for. We're asking for $30,000. And the last is on Weekends on Main equipment. We have been renting that as part of Weekends on Main, and I don't know if the numbers have come in, but definitely has proven to be an expensive undertaking. And so we're asking for $30,000 to actually purchase tables and chairs rather than renting them going forward.
Good. Thank you. We do have a couple questions already. We'll start with Councilmember Driscoll, then Fay.
Yeah, so if I run the numbers real quick, with the 514,413 remaining minus these additional expenditures, will we have it, in fact, 209,413? Is that the number I'm hearing that will be remaining?
Sorry.
209,413?
And we're gonna just try to pull up the last slide Tiffany had, but have to add the 185 or 187,000.
Yeah, let me calculate that real quick.
Well,
It's probably close.
I didn't even take out the 187,000 unless that came from Did that come out from the original 205?
No. Help me understand what you're asking, Patrick.
I want to know how much money we'll have remaining after, we started with 514,000. I just want to know if we approve these additional asks, what do we have remaining?
So the 205,000 that we're asking tonight has already been removed from the original 4.4. So that is what is 514 is what is left after the 205. Does that make
Gotcha.
sense? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
So the additional 30, 60, 90, 105,000 will come off that 514.
No, it's already been removed.
That's been removed too.
The 187
Yes.
comes off of it.
The 187 would come off the 514.
Gotcha. Okay, so all this has been already in consider. Okay, I'm with you.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Sorry.
Councilmember Fay?
Yeah, Ashley, you mentioned for weekends on Main. I had the impression that the city was trying to get out of the weekends on Main business and turning it over to Hoodlum and Littleton Business Chamber. Why are we still providing stuff, or did I get this all wrong? Are we still funding it?
I'm gonna ask for Mark's help on that one.
Yeah. Mark, help.
Well, we're currently still paying for it, and it's being paid for by a couple of grants at this point. I think the intent of the 30,000 would be to purchase the equipment so that we can replicate this in the years to come. So this is more than just the balance of the year.
Then for Mark, I had the impression from you that your intent by supporting the Littleton Business Chamber and Hoodlum right now was to get them to be self-sufficient in doing this kind of thing so that they weren't dependent and critical of the city for what the city does. Is that not going to happen now?
No, that's still the goal. In fact, we'll talk about that a little later here this evening when we get to the incentives for the DDA and the bid. So in essence, this equipment would be just would be handed over to the nonprofit. Eventually, at some point, it would be given to the responsibility of the nonprofit Downtown Merchants Association.
Why would we want to buy them equipment when they are supposed to be showing they can be self-sufficient?
If the council is not interested in doing that, then certainly we would not fund that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Elrod, then the Mayor Pro Tem.
Is this equipment going to be accessible to other organizations? I'm thinking, while it's still in our possession, I guess I didn't fully follow the handover to the Downtown Merchants Association, but will this be accessible, for example, for Western Welcome Week or other organizations that may have a need for equipment like this?
I think my intent would probably not to do that. I think that then we're starting to get into kind of a rental business that in some ways might even compete with the private sector. I think this is a very specific public purpose for Main Street. That is the real intent, at least that what staff has in mind. If the council wants to expand that, it just would take a staff resource to manage kind of a rental concept, if that makes sense.
I have a follow-up question. For the remainder of Weekends on Main through October, we are currently renting equipment, I believe, right? So once we purchase this, can we get out of that rental obligation? So we essentially become net zero impact?
Correct. That would be the intent, is to try to purchase this as soon as possible and then repurpose the balance of some of those grants to maybe do some other things.
Okay, that makes sense then. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mark, your last comment, I guess, changed what I was thinking. In what ways could we repurpose the grants that currently are paying for Weekends on Main?
Well, I think is Kelly Nardi here? Yeah, Kelly's here. She's trying to bring in some level of entertainment here that's a little unique to each of the weekends. And so certainly that would be a possibility to reallocate or redirect. So Kelly, can you maybe comment on what we've been trying to do downtown?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this weekend we've got a couple of exciting things that we're doing. We're bringing in a very, very large outdoor flat screen TV on Saturday night so people can watch the Denver Nuggets game out in the street. I think that'll be near the intersection of Nevada and Main. We're also helping to support Maha Yoga with Yoga in the Park. We will have some additional street artists down there this weekend. So we're trying to keep it really fresh and do exciting new things each weekend. One of our grants specifically says that we need to make an effort to do things that draw more people to downtown. And so by bringing in these special events, that's one way we're doing it. We're doing some other things. I don't know if you've heard, but we've been doing radio advertising as well. So I think, Mark's right. We could repurpose some of that money to go into additional activities in the downtown, as well as additional marketing, all with the end goal of bringing more people there.
Real quick follow-up, Mark, what do we expect the rental costs to be for the remaining weekends that we're doing weekends on Main?
I don't have that in front of me, but I think the cost is, I'm not sure. It's several $1,000s, but I couldn't say for sure off the top of my head. It changes because the restaurants have kind of modified their operations to we started out at kind of a base level with a lot of equipment, but as we've gone along, the restaurants have told us that they wanted to modify things, and some of them are doing fewer tables, some are doing more. So I'm not exactly sure of what the cost is right now, but it's several $1,000s a week.
In total, just off the top of your head, Kelly, is it comparable to this $30,000 purchase price?
You're on mute, Kelly.
I'm sorry. Initially, I think we started out at about $8,000 a week. I think it's considerably less than that now, probably at least half that. But I don't know what the ETA is on receiving this equipment. It may take a little bit of time, and I think we've got 5 weekends left.
Yeah, I got nuts everywhere.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We have Council Member Faye then Driscoll.
I'm still concerned about buying equipment for a process that we're trying to get out of with the intent of giving it to people who haven't shown that they're particularly interested in doing this. And so one of the things that comes up in my mind is, what if they don't want it after we've bought it for them? Then we're going to have a storage problem. And we already have a problem of not enough facilities to cover what we need to do. So then it starts looking like a building problem. This whole thing has, apologies to, no offense to you, Mark, that we haven't thought this through about the consequences of buying this equipment. I also heard that you can tell who's sponsoring we can buy the equipment that's on the street, the chairs and tables. If the city, it's all uniform, yet there are other weekends apparently where the individual somebodies put out and tables that the city, that don't all match. And so Kelly, could you talk about that? Do I have that all wrong?
I hesitate to speak about exactly what happened when it sort of shifted to dining on Main, but my understanding is that there were some businesses that just, had tables and chairs from the inside that they couldn't use because of social distancing, and they brought those tables outside into the streets, and they were okay with that.
And that sounds like that perhaps we don't need to provide tables, that the individual businesses can.
Can I address this, Jerry? Because obviously I've been involved.
Wait a minute. Did you just interrupt me, Mr. Driscoll? I think you did.
I did, because you're being redundant.
You get to interrupt me.
Well, get to your point, please.
I think you have to go through the mayor, and the mayor has to recognize you.
Councilmember Faye, if you'd please consider continuing. Okay.
Yes. Yes, I will. So it seems like we are considering making a purchase, and $30,000 isn't that much money, but in my world, it's a lot of money. Especially when we have nonprofits who want money, need money, things that need to be done. Buying tables of chairs it doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll, if you could please shed some light on this.
Yes, thank you. We have been working with Hoodlum, the city has, and we've been working with Hoodlum to purchase these chairs and tables. We just found it more cost effective if we were to purchase them in the beginning as opposed to renting them. We have scaled down on the quality of the chairs and on the tables. I don't know the exact number of chairs and tables we'll need. We've also allowed each business to create their own barrier per Tri-County Health. So 30,000 might be a little steep. We do have storage facilities in place that Greg Reinke and the Hoodlum Group have buying a storage container that they will be able to store these chairs and tables for future use. And this is not just this year. This will be ongoing. At least that was the conversation between the city and Hoodlum, is that we'd like to, continue weekends on Main as best we can going forward, regardless if there's COVID or not. So this is a good investment, and will cut down on setup and breakdown, having companies come and haul their stuff away. Not only that, but I think we are also looking at purchasing barriers. Surprisingly, the city doesn't own barriers, so Hoodlum was looking at purchasing barriers for intersections, that type of stuff. So all that can go into storage container. And again, the 30,000 is a placeholder. I've got a text out to Hoodlum to find out the exact number.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember Milliman and Elrod.
Thank you, Mayor. So I agree with Councilmember Driscoll. I think this is more of an investment again into our downtown, and it's going to help if we can help them get this DDA up and going. This might be a good first step to help with that partnership. And I agree with Patrick that I don't think this is going away. So many people have reached out to the city to say how much they loved Weekends on Main. I think that this is going to be a long-term investment for us. And also, if you think about this winter coming, I've talked to a couple of businesses too as well. They're trying to figure out how they can bring eating outside underneath big whatever kinds of tents, canopy tents or whatever. And so they'll be able to utilize those chairs and tables during the winter months when it is going to get a lot tougher to draw those patrons in. So I would support this.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember Elrod, and then it'll be my turn.
I do see this as an investment, and for that reason, especially kind of offsetting the cost, like why rent if at this point we really should buy. We know we're going to continue to do this year and hopefully into next year, and we want to participate in that as a city with the businesses. The only thing that I truly am interested in is that, or maybe where the concern is that we're buying it, but then we're giving it to an organization. I would like to have in some juncture, visibility to what that agreement looks like. And part of the concern there, I think Hoodlum has been great as far as really hosting and supporting all businesses, not just those that are part of Hoodlum. So I think that's an important call out in whatever that agreement is with Hoodlum, that this is really an investment in our greater downtown and not just limited to Hoodlum members or necessarily events just hosted by Hoodlum. They're a fantastic partner to a lot of the businesses. So I think maybe some of that detail I would like to just be certain, just for equitability and fairness of all of our downtown businesses.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, it's my turn, and then we'll go to Councilmember Grove. A couple issues here. For the city manager, so is this cost effective to purchase whatever the miscellaneous equipment is that, as far as you can see?
In total, Mayor, beyond just the equipment for weekends on Main, is that the question?
Yeah, the 30,000 that we would allocate if approved.
I do. I personally believe that this is, as many of council have already stated, that it offsets some of the rental costs that we're going to be seeing in the balance of the events. Plus, it's an investment beyond this year. I think that's probably, in my opinion, probably one of the stronger points.
So it's up to 30,000 whether you spend it all or not. That's what we're allocating and approving at this point.
Correct.
Or not approving.
Correct.
Okay.
It's just a placeholder. We would not expend more than that.
Right. So for council, our decision is, do we approve the 30,000 or not? We're not going to manage the 30,000 every step of the way. It's just, if we don't want to approve it, then we just don't approve it. I think I have heard just about from everybody on this.
Jerry,
I'm up to Council Member Grove. Patrick, if you could hang on just a second, let Council Member Grove go ahead.
I would support this, Ed. It's what everybody's kind of circled around. We're committed to about 20,000 based on Kelly's numbers, 4,000 for 5 weeks. And for an extra 10,000, we get the tables and chairs for future weekends on Main. And I think that's a pretty good investment.
Great. We have the Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, I'm fine with the finances of this because it sounds like renting versus buying is just 6 of one, half a dozen of another. What I'm a little concerned about is the optics of this at a time when we are trying to move in the direction of a bid or a DDA. I think at some point we're going to have to make decisions around these types of issues that really walk that talk. This seems like business as usual to me. It doesn't seem like we're moving in the direction of, so I'm if you want me to summarize real quick, I'm fine with it with that caveat.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll go to Councilmember Driscoll and then Fay.
Yes, Greg Ranke got back to me. It was $12,000 to buy tables and chairs. I'm waiting for an answer on barriers.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember Fay.
I'm really concerned about what happens once the tables and chairs go into Hoodlum's storage device. Number one, he already has a fair amount of containers in his backyard there in downtown. So he's going to put another one in there, I suppose, to put the tables and chairs in. I would like to have a legal agreement with him, the head of Hoodlum, I won't mention names, that he acknowledges that the city purchased this equipment to be used for city functions and not to become his or Hoodlum's property. He has a history of loving to fight with the city. And so I can envision this equipment being held hostage and then conveniently disappearing. So I really do want to have, Reed, are you on? I would like to have Reed draw up something where we have evidence of where the equipment went and for what purpose, so we can get it back out of his storage container for public events.
Okay, so you are yes or no on the 105, or do you want to reduce that?
I am not in favor of giving Hoodlum anything at this point because they don't behave like they're helping the city.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just want to comment on Mr. Ranke. He has been in the city a long time, and he's been very valuable to our city. He's had some disagreements. He's had far more agreements with the city, and I don't agree that he's loves arguing with the city. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, I think those comments were uncalled for, Carol. I'm in favor of the full 105.
Great, thank you. I think we have it. We have everybody, with the exception of Councilmember Fay, is in favor of the full 105,000 at this point. Just 1 second, a couple of questions. Mark, you have that direction at this point?
I do. Thank you, Council.
Great, thank you. Council Member Fay, then Elrod?
I would like to point out adamantly that I did not mention the name of any particular person. So I do not want letters to the editor saying that I did that, because that has happened before. The mayor mentioned a particular name and Pat Driscoll mentioned a particular name. I did not.
Council Member Elrod?
So the weekends on main equipment is only 30,000. There is nothing that's 105,000. So what is it that you were voting here? Because
No, it was under other is 105.
no, other is 205,000. And I do have some additional, questions on some other items.
Let's clarify that first, if you don't mind, with Tiffany. Tiffany, I'm looking at the chart. It says 105 for other.
Yes, it is 105 for other.
Okay, and that included the 30,000, of course, because that's how it all added up.
Yes.
You got that, Councilmember Elrod?
Yeah, so Tiffany, to note, then on page 7 of your presentation, other is 205,000.
Okay, that's a mistake.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Nice catch. Nice. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have questions on the Chamber's voting system and the Gartner partner subscription.
But you know what, Councilmember Elrod, we already have agreement from council to give direction to move forward with that.
Okay.
So if you want to change your position to a no, yeah, feel free.
Well, I'm changing my position because we didn't get to discuss the other 2 items. The only items there were questions on weekends on Main, and we talked about that, and you did not give us an opportunity to ask any further questions.
Go ahead and ask.
So on the council chamber voting system, why is this necessary? Again, I recognize it's only 15,000, but 15,000 is 15,000 to a potential business, 15,000 potential nonprofit. So we're already spending 1.4 million in the council chamber redesign. If this is, imperative, it is 1% of that 1.4 million. Can it not just be part of the 1.4 million? I'm concerned that number for council chamber keeps going up incrementally. So at some point, we just kind of have to know what we're doing there and move on. So can we just absorb this in that 1.4 million rounded number?
I'm comfortable in finding a way, Karina, because I honestly feel like Tiffany and I have been talking about trying to do a reconciliation really of everything across all of the asks, not only for this round, but the previous rounds. And I think we would be able to find 15,000 somewhere. I don't want to say that we can out of the 1.4 because that's Keith's call. But I think Tiffany and I, between the 2 of us, in terms of reconciling all of the other 3, it's very possible that we'll find that 15,000.
So Tiffany, we're now changing that number from 105 down to 90. City Manager, you want to add comments?
Let me just comment on that. I do not recommend that we try to squeeze this out of the money that Keith Reister is trying to manage for the remodel. I just can't guarantee that we'll get the voting system that way. So I think if you want to look at different options and not use the CARES Act, then we certainly could look at other city resources. This is just an opportunity for the CARES Act. So personally, I'd go ahead. My recommendation is to go ahead and actually purchase this separately and not some other system or other methodology.
I just haven't heard that it's necessary, right? I mean, we're at a position with CARES and with our budget overall that we're really focused on what is absolutely necessary. I didn't get a sense of that. It's not about quibbling over 15,000, but it's more of just kind of the principle of it. So if someone can make a strong argument of the necessity of this, I might, take a different position. I'm just trying to be very diligent about each individual decision, regardless of whether it's 10,000 or 100,000.
Did you want to change your direction on this item?
Yeah, I at this point, I am not supporting the 15,000 for the voting system.
One more time, I'm sorry.
I am not supporting 15,000 for the voting system.
Okay, so I'll put you into the no category for that, if you don't mind. Then we have Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Driscoll.
I agree with Karina. I didn't realize we were given direction on each of these line items. I thought we were talking about tables and chairs for weekends on Main. I'd like to have some discussion on this
Yeah.
and the
Absolutely.
consultant charge.
So we're going to break it now. We're going to break out that 105. We'll go down each item. If that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, please. I
Okay.
think each of these bears discussion. So.
All right, then let's just start with the very first one. Let's start with the website assessment of $30,000. Go ahead, Scott, you have it.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Jerry?
We're starting with the first item, which was the strategic website assessment.
Yeah, Ashley, can you just explain again your point of order?
Councilmember Fay, could you mute yourself, please?
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry,
Ashley,
Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, Ashley, could you just explain again sort of what we get out of the consultant?
You bet. We're looking actually to take a strategic lens at not only existing what we have, but looking towards the future and trying to architect a new website that not only would present the content and everything that Kelly and her team have done so far with our website today, but think towards the future and how we could provide a better, more dynamic user experience for the different types of audiences that we will have at our website or coming towards our website. Additionally, I think we'd really like to take a technical look also at the foundation underlying of the website of how we'd be built. Right now, the current vendor content management system that we're on actually doesn't allow us to do a lot of things. There are a lot of limitations because we don't have access to the developer toolkit. And so we're kind of hamstrung in terms of some of the integrations and things that we could do today. So we'd really like to try to take the time to actually look at what are the options out there and pick something that's going to allow us to grow and give us the flexibility that we need, not only for Kelly and her team and the internal departments to add content that we think our residents, business owners, et cetera, would be interested to learn what's going on here, but also to be able to technically integrate with other plugins and APIs to, again, keep us more dynamic versus kind of the static kind of look and feel that we have a bit going on today.
Okay, I would support that. Thank you, Ashley.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll, would you like to comment on the website question?
Yes, and I would prefer to, $30,000 is a lot for a consultant to come in and look at our website and say you need a new one. I would prefer to take that $30,000 and start building a new one. And I don't know where that $30,000 came from.
Councilmember Fay, can I get you to mute yourself?
All right.
The laughing is getting a little bit overwhelming. Thank you.
The that $30,000, I don't know if that's just a placeholder, much like the tables and chairs, but again, I would advocate to hold that as a placeholder, but maybe to actually start rebuilding a website rather and give up on the idea of sitting down with the consultant to talk about a design. So
you're in favor of the 30K or?
Yeah, I'm okay with it, but I hope we can allocate that a little differently.
Sure. And it's my understanding that we're allocating up to this amount. Doesn't mean they have to spend every penny of it. Is that correct, Mark?
Let me add some commentary here, and I think, Ashley, you're going to have to correct me. I think based on the timing of the CARES Act, we can't rebuild the web page in time and expend the money. So that's at the end of the year. And we do need to take a strategic look. That's what a lot of companies who work in web pages actually will do, is make an assessment about what is it you have. So you have to take an inventory of what you've got and try to help you understand where is it you want to go. So some of the transactions that Ashley described that we want to interface with the community, our public, is the piece for which we don't have a handle on. And so that's what we're trying to look at, is this kind of strategic assessment. Does that make sense? Ashley, did I get anything incorrect there?
You were spot on, Mark. And again, it is that December 30th constraint that we're really facing with CARES and trying to bite off a piece of work that we know we can get done by December 30th. so that we don't put ourselves in jeopardy of not getting these funds reimbursed. We want to make sure that we know Arapahoe County's been very stringent, and we don't want to put us in any way, shape, or form of the possibility of not getting reimbursed for this.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Council Member Elrod. Are you in favor of or not in favor of? Thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Then for you, let's go to Council Member Fay. Are you in favor of?
Yes.
Not in favor.
In favor.
Thank you. We'll go to Council Member Grove
In favor?
and Council Member Milliman.
Great, I'm in favor.
Thank you. All righty, let's go down to the next item, which is the council chamber voting system. I don't think we finalized that one. Since we're breaking this out this way, who wants to start it out?
I can answer that question, Mayor.
Sure.
The existing voting system that is in the council chamber will not work in the new council chamber. It is not a recyclable product. We looked at that alternative. So the alternatives are to install a new system or to go to hand voting if you'd like to do that. So we'll try and look at alternatives. I know that Kelly's team and our engineering team and the contractor and designer have looked pretty hard at this. But that's the reason why we cannot use the old system in the new chamber. So that's the basis for why that's in there.
And Councilmember Elrod?
Thank you, Keith. So based on that, I would support it. I just haven't asked Mark that, I just feel like the council chamber is becoming bigger and bigger of an investment. I don't want to call it scope creep, but at some point we just have to draw the line and say, figure it out. Here's the total. And that means maybe we give and take. So if we need a voting system, then maybe we don't have a chair. I'm just making it up, but I'm just saying at some point we have to stop asking for money for the council chamber. Please.
Thank you. Councilmember Grove?
I would support this. And I think when you're dealing with electronics and the future and all this kind of stuff, it's hard sometimes to predict how much you might need for certain things. And I know we have this 1.4 budget, but I would advocate for this advanced system.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Fay?
I like to support what Councilmember Elrod said. Let's be careful about creep and otherwise in support.
Great, thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Milliman. Kelly?
Oh, sorry, I support it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kelly. All right, we have, let's see, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I support it.
Great, as well as I. Thank you. We'll go down to our, was it the Gardner Executive Partner subscription, which is 30,000. Councilmember Elrod.
Sorry, all of this is in my realm, so I have something to say.
No, come on, Karina.
I'm very familiar with Gartner. It is an excellent subscription, and I do think it kind of gives you a view of what best practices are, and I think that's great for our city. A little bit of my concern here, again, it's a little bit more directed towards Mark, is we're investing in the subscription, which helps us to identify the best technology solutions for us, but I don't think we have money for capital investment yet and technology solutions. So I'm I guess I'm a little hesitant right now of why we're ready to get into this partnership subscription when we don't have a solve for how we would be able to fund or implement any kind of recommendations or observations that we have from the subscription.
Okay, but otherwise you are in favor?
It's a good product, yes.
Great. All right, thank you. Councilmember Driscoll, where are you on this item?
Yeah, I'm fine. But when I hear subscription, I hear this is the start of something that we're just getting the thing going for 30 grand. What is our yearly out of pocket for this this subscription?
Yeah, so it would be for 1 year, Pat, and I think part of what we would look to do is actually prove the benefit of this over the course of the year. And if we can prove that it is paid for itself, and hopefully it'll be even more than that, then we could look to renew in 2022. But this would be for 1 year, starting whenever, if we got your approval. And if I could take a minute just to address Karina's point too, I think one of the big things that really impresses me about Gartner is not only about the future technology products to invest in, they also have a ton of analysts who really focus on cost optimization as well as shared services models. And I think us creating, for example, the admin services model with Tiffany, Noel, myself, bringing a purchasing division into admin services, I think Gartner can really also help us effectively look at the shared services angle and how we could really make some decisions that ultimately save us money that could help us fund then some of these new asks that you're exactly right, that sometimes it takes money to make money kind of thing. So I do feel like that optimization aspect around costs will really help us with this subscription.
Can you give us an idea what next year and the following years would cost?
So if this executive partnership that we're looking at, typically we're getting right now a discount. They have a CARES Act thing. I believe the full year subscription is $58,000. I already had money in my budget to go to part of that. And so we're asking basically for the delta to take us up to this executive partnership. They have a basic subscription that we were able to get for $30,000. And this is basically the delta to get us to the executive partnership, which gives us more hands-on access to the 1,300 analysts that work for Gartner, as well as workshops and other things that we could do hands-on with an executive partner who would be dedicated to us.
So moving forward, it's going to be a $60,000 hit to our budget every year?
If we decide to continue. And I already had half of that in my budget for IT already, so it would be finding the delta if we wanted to continue with the executive partnership.
Okay, I'm still in favor. I'm good.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember Fay, where are you on this? Your thumbs up, okay. The city manager, you had a comment?
Well, I think my suggestion is we obviously, if council decides they want to fund it for the 1 year, we treat this like a pilot project, as Ashley's kind of suggesting. We come back and have a more detailed conversation about how effective we've shown this could be. Because obviously, 60,000 plus is a pretty heavy cost annually. And obviously we want to make sure that we're getting real benefit out of that. I mean, real benefit. So I appreciate the council's concern there.
Great, thank you very much.
One more thing, Mayor, if I might add, also too, they bring a wealth of knowledge in terms of the trends around cybersecurity and knowing how quickly our landscape is changing and how much more risk we're at with a remote work environment. They also bring perspectives around cybersecurity. So we also have a risk mitigation, I think, by partnering with somebody that really is an expert in that space, knowing that we don't have all those resources internally here at the city.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Grove. Thank you. Councilmember Millman.
I appreciate Councilmember Driscoll's questions, and yeah, I support it.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think it presents some exciting opportunities for the city.
Great, thank you very much. All right. Now we're back down to the equipment. We've already discussed the equipment, and everybody, with the exception of Councilmember Fay, was in favor of that. Was there anyone else that wanted to change their direction on that? If not, everybody but Councilmember Fay, correct me if I'm wrong, you were opposed to that direction? Okay. Mark, we got back to where we were about a half hour ago.
Thank
you.
you.
Your direction on the 100.
Appreciate
105.
Yeah, thank you for that. So
Great.
I think
thank you very much. All right. Do we have anything else on this particular item? I don't think so. I think we can move on to our second item on the agenda, Council, and that is ID number 20-244. This is the proposed budget review. And Council, we're going to provide direction on 7 parking lot items that we had come up with over the previous 2 nights on the budget review. And with that, I'll turn it to the city manager.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'll shift now to kind of the balance of the budget review here. And as the mayor pointed out, we have a parking lot of issues to address. And so once again, I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany Hooton now at this point, and she's going to walk us through tonight's agenda.
If I could stop, I see a lot of folks have gone off their pictures. Is it because maybe they need a break? Do we need a break, council?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see some nodding heads. If we could, right now it is 7:20. If we could get back in 7:25, 5 minutes. All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, Ben, we're going to take a break. All right, I'm calling to order our meeting back at 7:25 again. We are back from our recess, and Councilmember Elrod does want to change her direction on the voting system. Whoa, of the 15,000. Karina, did you want to give a brief statement on that?
I did. Thank you. Thank you, Council. I do want to go back, at least for the record, to state I am not going to support the council chamber's voting system for 15,000.
Great, thank you very much. All right, again, we are now on ID number 20-244. That is the proposed budget review. And as I mentioned, Council, we are going to give direction on 7 parking lot items that we have come up with over the last 2 nights of budget reviews that we had. And back to the city manager, and I think you were getting ready to hand off to Tiff.
It was, Mayor. So I will let Tiffany proceed here in the Aspen room. Tiffany, please.
Okay. All right, I'm going to bring up a presentation that is the original one that we started back on September 8th, I believe it was, when we had the first 2 budget meetings. So I just want to quickly kind of run through what we're going to do this evening. And I understand we're under some time constraints, so hopefully we'll be able to get through it. So just to recap, we had originally planned on discussing the enterprise funds, and then we're going to move to some of our other funds, some special revenue funds that we have. And then we do have some parking lot items that we want to kind of highlight and talk about. And then we have a couple of other discussion items. And then we'll hopefully leave some room for some closing remarks. So I do apologize. I'm going to kind of scroll through some of these slides here. Can you see the slides? I'm sorry. I probably should have checked that first.
Yes, I see the slides.
Okay. All right. Let me get this in a better view mode here. All right, so I'm going to kind of push through here so that we can get to the first utility fund. All right, so we're going to go over a couple of enterprise funds. So the city currently has 2 Tabor enterprise funds, and those are the sewer utility fund and the stormwater fund. And we'll talk quickly about the sewer utility fund. On the screen, you have kind of our 5-year projection for the sewer utility fund. And, you know, we've worked with the city of Inglewood on the costs related to the sewer plant, because that certainly is one of the largest expenditures related to the sewer fund. And we've gotten some revised capital numbers from their 10 and 15-year plan that we've incorporated into our 5-year plan. And then we've also kind of looked at, you know, what rates do we need for the future based on our ending cash needs. And I did want to note that we have some debt that was issued when we did the expansion of the plant, and that debt is anticipated to be paid off in 2025. So the last year you see here is the last year of any debt service that we have related to the sewer plant. And I think just, you know, in talking with the plant, understanding the biogas project that is up and running and coming online, and from what I understand, we actually are starting to receive some funds from the sale of that biogas that's being emitted. And so just looking at some estimates based on the RENs, we did modify our 5-year plan. But I think the best story that we have for the sewer utility fund is that it is funded currently. We have a fiscally constrained 5-year plan. You know, in the out year, it gets a little short on cash, but if you look in past 2025, it certainly does rebound. And we're going to continue to watch that. But I think for the sewer utility fund in whole, we're actually doing really good. You know, at the end of 2019, we had $26 million in cash after our operating reserve. It's well funded currently. And, you know, we don't feel like we need to raise rates any more than we have in the past. So we are recommending a 3% increase. It's in line with what we've proposed and had in previous years. And I don't anticipate at this point that changing in the future. We also are currently underway on a sewer and storm drainage utility rate study. And so we'll be interested and excited to know what the results of that rate study is as far as our future needs for capital and expansion. Oops, how did I just do that? So I think, you know, if you have any specific questions about the sewer utility fund, we're happy to answer. We've allowed some capital expenditures over the next 5 years just for the city portion of the sewer utility. And then again, I mentioned the plant itself is the largest expenditure related to providing sewer service. We don't have any policy questions related to the sewer fund.
We do have one question.
Okay.
Councilmember Driscoll?
Yes, Tiffany, you say, you know, we've been consistent with raising a 3% per year. How many years have we been doing this? And why can't we seem to budget to where we don't have any future raises of that 3%? That seems ludicrous to me that, yeah, I understand costs go up slightly, but I mean, every year, 3% consistently. So are we talking the last 15, 20 years?
So if I look back, it's actually been between 2 and 3% for the last 8 years. And in 2018, we did not do an increase. There was a 0% in 2018, but in 2017, 16, 15, and 14, it was only a 2% increase. And then 2013, it was a 3%. So it's been relatively low for the past 10 or so years. And again, this is a plan, and we certainly will analyze it each year. And if we see that we, you know, may not need a 3% in a future year, we would definitely make that change. I think the rate study is going to provide us a lot of insight on what our potential future expenditures are. And I think that's going to help us really understand what rates we might look at in the future, whether they be lower or whether they be higher.
City Manager?
I just want to add a little background. I think Councilmember Driscoll asked a great question, a very typical question. A 3%, in my view, represents basically the cost of inflation because our expenditures do not remain static. We have all sorts of costs that increase, you know, from outside consultants and contractors, and certainly our own staffing costs increase each year. So a 3% in the utility world is a very low actual increase. But I think Tiffany is spot on. And one of the reasons why staff has recommended strongly that we do a rate study is we haven't done one in 10 years. And so I think that is an opportunity for council to kind of reaffirm that this 3% number we're using for the time being is accurate. One other piece I just would like to maybe comment on is that this is an enormous success story for the city of Littleton. I think we need to thank our predecessors, both at council level and certainly staff level. We have made some tough decisions long ago that got us into this position here so that we don't have to borrow money, so that we don't have these very difficult rate increases, double digit. Our partner in Inglewood is struggling deeply with this issue at the moment. And if council will remember, I had to send a letter to the city of Inglewood here, kind of stressing this point. So I think it's a very fair question about whether or not the 3% is really the number we need to focus on. And we hope to answer that here within the year.
Councilmember Elrod, then Driscoll.
Two questions. So the first one is, so we just did a rate increase. Maybe obviously it wasn't for the sewer utility. It was some other kind of utility. What was that other rate increase that we had to help the citizens this past year?
Stormwater, and we'll talk about that one next as well.
I always get stormwater and sewer interchange. I wonder why. Okay, my other concern here is I'm looking at this. In 2021, we have a net ending cash balance of 17.8 million. By 2025, we have $756,000. So where's the big outflow of money that we're going to be under $1 million in cash balance so quickly, from 17 million to $1 million? What am I not seeing?
Yeah, so, you know, we have a lot of large expenditures at the sewer plant itself that we share with Inglewood. And so there's the line item that talks about SPWRP treatment. And so those are capital costs related to the sewer plant. And like I mentioned, that's the largest expenditure that we have. You know, we could certainly, if we wanted to, look at maybe issuing some sort of debt to fund that rather than cash funding. I think in the past, the idea has been, you know, if we have the funds, let's cash fund that. And so that's what we're doing in this 5-year plan. But certainly as we continue to revise this plan each year, we would look at that. And that's why, you know, even though there's a lower balance in 2025, I think we have some really good opportunities with the RIN program that we have right now. There's some things happening at the state level that might allow us to kind of dip into some additional funds related to the RINs and the biogas project, which are not factored in here, but that's certainly a potential in the next few years. And so again, it's purely just a cash funding. If we have the funds, you know, we can pay cash. If we want to look at issuing some sort of debt, maybe some revenue bonds, or maybe working with the Colorado Water and Power Development Authority to see if there's any maybe loans we can get through them, that certainly is an option.
So how this capital project's then planned, that's a 5-year plan out over, you know, call it $7 million or $6 to $7 million, much higher than it ever has been in the past. So is that like, is there an actual 5-year capital project plan? And maybe we just haven't seen it, or I've forgotten that we've seen it. What is?
Yeah, and I don't know, Mark, you're a member of the supervisory committee at the plant level. I don't know if you maybe want to comment on that one. Here, I'll stop sharing my screen real quick.
Yeah, that's at the joint meeting between the two councils. Annually, we share with you the draft of the 5-year capital plan. And we do have substantial capital improvements that need to be constructed at the plant in order to meet the effluent limitations here set by the state of Colorado for the plant. And so that is the issue, the cost of a sewer utility when you own a plant, is making sure that you have those capital pieces. And if you'll remember some of the conversation that's actually changed over the last couple of years with Peter Van Rye kind of stepping into this thing, we've actually been able to reduce that estimate of the capital necessary to meet that discharge permit substantially. And so we've been able to work with the state, and staff has put a lot of effort into this to be able to stage the capital improvements over multiple years, as opposed to one single or couple of years. This allows the quite honestly, in my view, the ability for the city of Littleton anyways, to use a cash approach so that we don't have to borrow. Borrowing can be very advantageous if you have a large expenditure that's out multiple years, and so that the cost of borrowing could be less than the cost of construction inflation. So that's typically the test. But in this particular case, this is why I guess I'm so thrilled about what we've got, is that we don't need to borrow. We truly don't. And I appreciate the fact that our ending cash balance may be a little low, but it's certainly well within all the financial responsibilities and parameters we've set for the utility. If we weren't within those parameters, then clearly staff would be recommending at some point we would have to borrow.
Great. Councilmember Driscoll, then Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Mark, since we got you. So that's, you know, if that's $6 million for next year and $7 million the years thereafter. Is that the full number? I mean, how is Inglewood going to afford additional $7 million per year? Or is that just the total amount, and then we'll split that $6 million, so $3 million out?
That's our half. So that tells you the magnitude of the expenditure that's necessary at our wastewater treatment plant. So yes, I think, you know, and again, reflecting back on a couple of years in Inglewood when we had to send the letter, I think my conversations, certainly through the supervisory committee and certainly with the city manager, they are taking action here internally within Inglewood to kind of step up the process here to accelerate their rate structure within their own sewer utility in order to meet their obligation. That's always been the concern. Are they financially positioned to meet their obligation? Because if they're not, in the end, we will not be able to build the improvements and therefore not be able to meet the discharge permit.
I mean, if you're talking $13 million for the next 5 years, that's astonishing.
I'll jump in here. You know, it does seem astonishing, but just to put that in perspective, the current value of that asset is $560 million. So if we're going to invest $7 million a year, that's an extremely small percentage of the total value of the plant. And that doesn't even include the infrastructure that feeds that plant that's spread out serving 250,000 people between us and Englewood.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
I mean, from a overall magnitude standpoint, it is the biggest asset that we own, other than maybe our streets that are out there. So that, to put it in perspective, in terms of the value against the value, that's kind of how it ratios out.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
I have a question similar to Pat's. What are the expectations for capital and improvements in years 6 through 10? Is that sort of trajectory going to continue, and we're going to start needing to debt fund, $7 million a year, $6 million a year?
Keith?
You want it, Mark? Or you want me? So Mark and I both sit on the supervisory committee, and we did that this morning. So, this one of the great things over the last couple of years that Mark and I are most probably excited about is we do have now a 10-year plus capital plan that we didn't have before. And, 2 or 3 years ago, that number looked like $500 million over 20 years. And that number is down to probably 40% of that now. And I know this may seem crazy to people on the outside, but this is a pretty dynamic environment, and there's a lot of things changing in that industry. And so some of the things that we're doing now will actually push those potential expenditures further out. The regulatory environmental change, it'll allow us to incorporate new technology. And so our hope is that in those years from 6 to basically 15, we're going to be able to maximize the return on this and actually drive those costs to a far more controllable standpoint. If you look around at some of our peers, that is not the case. They're out there spending lots of money. It's all new equipment, it's all new everything to meet the regulatory, and at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure what goes in the South Platte River is clean.
Long term, though, are we able to handle that kind of financial obligation?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's 17 million now, and what is it, 700,000 500 years from now, I mean, over 15, 20 years, that becomes just a tremendous financial burden in terms of debt funding that to the city.
Well, that's part of, there's two parts. It's that very strategic master planning that's going on at the level out of the plant. And then in addition to that, that's combined with the work that we're doing on the rate study side of it. So we understand what financial structure we need to take care of the plant, the collection system, and then the system that feeds into us from our distributor districts out there as well. So the combination of all those things is really coming together right now. And in the next probably 4 months, I think 5 months, depending on the timeline, you're going to see all of that in detail and be able to see what that looks like, how we need to look at the rate structure over the next decade, and how all that fits together, including what we need to be charging new development and redevelopment in the city in terms of impact fees.
Mark, are you want to add to this discussion? Yeah, and what direction do you looking for from council on this particular item? It's not one of our parking lot items.
No, I think, if the council is uncomfortable with basically the rate increase of 3% for next year, then I guess we should talk about that. Otherwise, that's the recommendation, at least for 1 year. We're showing you a financial plan for 5 years. The piece I do want to add to this, Mayor, is, and I think it's a great question by the pro tem here. Remember, we're serving a population of over 200,000 with this plant. It's not just Englewood. It's not the two cities. At some point, and I've raised this maybe with a few of you, maybe in the future, this might be an asset that's transferred to some kind of a regional wastewater treatment plant as opposed to something owned just by two cities. Now, there's lots of reasons why cities still own wastewater treatment plants, and there's lots of advantages to that. But at some point, the city perhaps loses that advantage. And I have a long experience for that. Typically, cities keep those things for annexation purposes, largely. In our case, that's not so much the issue anymore. So at some point, we do have to question whether or not this truly needs to be owned by both cities and whether or not there is a different model that may be to everybody's advantage.
Great, thank you. And before I get to Councilmember Millen, so what you're looking for from council is direction. Either do we agree with a 3% increase in the fee or not. That's the bottom line that we're looking for direction on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Councilmember Milliman.
Could you explain again the biogas credits and how that gets, how that plays back into all of this? And would those funds be used for, to maybe help lower the, this sewer fee rate?
Sure. The intention of that is entirely to continue to offset the costs. We had a resource that was just basically being flared into the atmosphere. It's now being captured. It's being resold. We're getting financial benefit from that. And the ROI on that plant is still, that project is still 3.5 to 4 years. And once that passes that threshold, that revenue, other than basic maintenance, is all stuff that will offset these long-term investment costs for the ratepayers. So this morning at Supervisory Committee, we actually have the first check in hand on the RIN credits for $92,000. I really wanted to bring a big check over for all of you tonight, but that was nixed by the staff. So, yeah, so that's all that revenue goes against the the investment of the plant and helps with offsetting costs in the long run.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Elrod.
My hand kept going up and down.
So Keith, patient.
Something. So went back up because of Keith. So Keith, you said once we start getting the the revenue that's coming back, it's to offset the rates for our our citizens, our consumers here. So are you saying that will get calculated into this rate study with some component that would be credits coming back? Yeah, I'm just concerned about most rate studies come back to say it's going to go up. And part of how those rate studies are done are, what are your plans for the future? So obviously, if our plans for the future are all these capital investments, et cetera, then obviously it's going to cost more. So I guess all I'm asking is, are those credits calculated in the rate study so that it truly does come back to the citizen?
Yes.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
So I guess I'm a little confused at this point. We went from there's no policy direction that's being asked for to now we're being potentially asked to weigh in on a 3% rate increase for this enterprise fund. Is that?
That's
correct.
correct.
I'm not prepared to do that. I think we need to devote time to that. I think I need to see some materials. I'm pretty taken aback by that, in fact.
Well,
Mark, anything you want to add?
I think this is part of the budget process. What we're presenting to you is a 5-year financial plan showing you what happens with the rate increase for the 3% across the 5 years. So that is the presentation. We're showing you how the utility itself is balanced within that period. And so there isn't a specific question asking, do you approve that? But in essence, if a council has a question about anything, you certainly can raise that. But that is the question this evening is, can we proceed?
All right, that's you. Is that clear for you, Scott? Okay. All right. We have Councilmember Grove and Faith.
Seems like this 3% increase covers our capital reinvestment. So it makes sense. It's a healthy fund and we need it. And if we don't have the money for it and we can't depend on biogas to cover any shortfalls, that we need this to keep up the capital improvements and to keep this fund healthy. So I support what staff is recommending.
Good, thank you. We have Councilmember Fay.
Yeah, two things that occurred in very recent history, the last couple of years, is that we were given the information that we needed to have this rate increase. And I don't know whether it's the current council or the previous one was okay with that because just plain needed. The second thing with the biogas, let's keep in mind that the city of Littleton City Council, the previous one, approved a $4 million investment in this biogas plant. So the money that we're getting back from it is applying to that 4 million, is $4 million out, and 92,000, it sounds like, back in. So it's not a gimme.
Okay. So are you in favor of moving this forward for a fee increase or no?
Yes, yes.
Yes, you are. Okay, great. And then I'll chime in here, and then it'll be Councilmember Driscoll's. I too am in favor of this, Mark, of moving forward with this. Over the years, we've talked a lot about these things. We're in a better situation than the city of Inglewood, thank goodness. But part of the reason is because of the management of the Littleton staff, at least. The biogas is no magic bullet. I mean, it's the amount of money, the 98,000, whatever you said it was, is less than what we had anticipated. And there is no guarantee of getting anything from that year after year. It's as much as we're not putting about 50% of that pollution into the air. It'll likely not be less than 50% or whatever that number is. But it does bring in some money, but it also doesn't pollute the way it used to. So I'm certainly in favor of that. We'll go to Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Elrod, your position?
I'm fine with this.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Fay is already mentioned. Councilmember Grove, Councilmember Milliman.
Clean water going into the Platte River, so I support this.
One more time, sorry.
I support clean water going into the Platte River, so I support this.
Okay, thank you. Council member or Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah.
Thank you. And that is it. So on that particular item, Mark, you do have your direction from staff to proceed.
All right, thank you, Council.
Great. Are we getting ready to go into the 7 parking lot items, or do you have something else?
Stormwater utility.
Okay, let's do that. Council, do you have any additional discussion, or do we have a presentation of some sort?
You do have a presentation.
Great, thank you.
All right, so we do have a few more funds that we want to just highlight tonight. So the next one is the storm drainage fund. And last year, if you recall, staff came to council and we had a real concern about funding related to storm drainage improvements. We have a number of improvements that we have not been able to do, a lot of projects that we really needed to take care of as far as drainage issues. And so we brought to council last year a 3-year rate increase phase-in kind of process. And this was specifically to address some of those concerns of flooding and things throughout the city. And so last year we did ask council, and council did support an increase to the storm drainage fee. And this year we are asking council support for another increase to the storm drainage fee. And so this would be year 2 of a phase-in, of a 3-year phase-in. And so if you look at it on an annual basis, it would be a $19.09 increase annually for storm drainage. So just a reminder, you know, when the city bills for sewer and storm drainage, residents get this bill on one bill. And so it includes the sewer utility side. And if you are subject to storm drainage, it will also include a storm drainage fee. And so the policy question this evening is, does council support an increase of $19.09 per year for the storm drainage fee? And I just kind of want to highlight where we are currently in relation to some of our neighbors when it comes to storm drainage. So currently we are at $3.98, and this is per month. We're at $3.98. And so we are just above the lowest neighbor, which is Centennial Sanitation District. And so we're proposing to increase to $5.57 a month. So we would be right in the middle comparatively. A little brief history about our storm drainage fees. We did not increase fees for well over 20 or 30 years. The annual fee was $24, and that was up until the year 2015, where we really started bringing forward to council the need to address some of these drainage issues and some of these stormwater concerns. And so in 2015 is the first year that we actually increased our stormwater fee, and we increased it from $24 to $30 a year. So a $6 increase. And so we have increased or asked council to support an increase annually so that we can address some of these increasing costs over the past few years. So again, we have a 5-year plan related to the storm drainage fund, and this kind of shows you where the rates have been. Last year we did an increase. This year we're requesting an additional increase, and then in 2022 we're potentially going to ask for another increase, and that's part of our 3-year phase-in. You'll see that this fund, estimated at the end of 2020, had about $24,000 is what we're estimating. And so it was imperative that we implement some sort of fee increase so we can address these capital project needs. And so you can see in year 2025, we're starting to turn around. And the rate study, again, that we're currently under with the sewer and the storm drainage funds are going to provide some insight and some information on where our rates should be. Are they where they need to be? Do we need to have some sort of change in that rate structure over the next 5-10 years? So again, I think that rate study is going to provide a lot of information related to that. So that the ask that we have this evening before council is, do you support an increase of $19.09 annually for storm drainage related fees?
Great, thank you. And I have a question first, then we'll go to Councilmember Elrod. And this is residential fees, not commercial. Is that correct?
Right. The example that we have here is for a single family customer, and all of them are the same rate. It's a flat rate. We don't bill based on usage or anything related to water.
And commercial fee, will that increase?
It will. It will have a corresponding percentage increase as well.
And is this fee for all those that are using the drainage facility, or is it just Littleton or outside Littleton?
So this is primarily only Littleton residents because we are servicing only Littleton for storm drainage. Residents that are outside of Littleton have a fee that they currently pay with their own districts.
Okay, thank you. And just for let you know, I am in favor of this fee increase. Council Member Elrod?
Glove-related questions. So the proposed Littleton fee of $557, that would be after the 3rd year of an increase, correct?
That would be after the 2nd year.
So after the 3rd year, how much would it be?
It would be, I'm guessing, $9, $8 to $9.
So after the 3 years that we put through this rate increase, they would have gone from something less than $3.98 to over $9.
Yes.
And my question is,
and Mark, I think, has a comment at this point, if you don't mind, Karina, if you can hang on just one.
I didn't mean to interrupt here, but I think Keith can probably add some context, just provide a little history. Remember here, Keith just went through an assessment here recently, and we discovered 40% more storm drainage than we anticipated in any kind of mapping. And so we've put really no maintenance to the storm utility here for quite some time. And that's kind of why these, what appears to be, at least on a percentage basis, pretty significant.
Okay. Great. Back to Councilmember Elrod. Thank you.
So I also heard you say that we're going to do another rate study. So didn't we just do the rate study on the storm drainage fees in order to come up with this $19?
So Tiffany, I'll take that one if you want. So, you know, part of, I'll be honest, part of what you're seeing here is predecessors to everyone on this screen didn't raise the stormwater rates for 2 decades. And, you know, basically when Mark and I got here, we had the only people that charged less than us were people that didn't charge. And you have millions of dollars of deferred maintenance. And so the rate study we did was based on the assessment that we started with at that time. And in preparation for the rate study we're doing now, as well as the master plan, we went out there and cameraed every inch of pipe. And that's how we know, you know, what we have. And a perfect example of some of this deferred maintenance is you've all driven by the heavy equipment that's sitting at the corner of Prince and Santa Fe. That's there because that detention facility has been sedimented in for 30 years with zero maintenance. And so those are the kind of things that we're kind of up against. And so the rate study we did when we did about 3 years ago is let's figure out what it takes us just to take care of what we have at the moment. And then let's go through a true process of assessing what we have and figuring out what it's going to take us to maintain the city's assets. We're not even talking about going out and building assets. It's maintaining what we have. So that was how we came up with the numbers that we do today. So that's kind of the basis of how we got here now.
Was that different than an official rate study? Is that what you're saying? That was just kind of internally based versus?
Yeah, I mean, as Tiffany said, we haven't done an official external rate study on either of the two utilities in more than a decade, which is fairly uncommon. Most utilities will do a full-blown rate study in typically the 5 to 7 year range at the latest, but more often on the 5-year cycle. And that's an external assessment. That's not internal.
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, yeah, I'm in favor of this, but I obviously it's painful that we have this conversation every year, and it just seems like we're nickel and diming our citizens to death. And at some point, we've got to get under control. I know we're playing catch up, but I'm just putting my citizens hat on and saying, you know, talking with the LPS today, talking, you know, with you guys today, you know, it's getting to the point where, you know, to live in Littleton, just to not even, you know, it's just getting expensive. It is expensive.
All right, thank you very much. All right, let's go down the row here and just get the people's positions on this. We've heard from Councilmember Driscoll. Councilmember Elrod, where are you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I looked away. Was that a thumbs up?
That was fine.
Thank you. Councilmember Fay.
I'm very much in favor of this really small rate increase because of what previous councils didn't do. We have an artificially low rate. I was appalled when I first moved here how little it costs to do this, and then it didn't go up for years. And it's way overdue to go up.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Grove.
I agree with what Carol said. I support it.
Great. Councilmember Millman.
I support it. I look at it as by the end of year 3, that's just an extra Starbucks once a month, maybe that you don't buy to help support this fee that it should have been dealt with a long time ago. So.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I mean, I think the infrastructure this rate increase is going to pay for is absolutely critical. I just lament, as I suppose Councilmember Fay mentioned, this just over and over again, we walk into this story of Littleton being an outlier because council didn't make the decision they needed to make sometime in the distant past. So, I'm glad that we're doing it. Let's do it.
Great, thank you. All right, Mark, you do have some direction on that item.
We do, yes. Thank you, Council.
Great, thanks. All right, so all council wasn't agreed to move it forward. All right, what is our next item?
All right, moving along, we are going to talk about Geneva Village quickly. So Geneva Village is an enterprise fund that we have, and this is the fund that we use to maintain rents that are coming in related to Geneva Village and expenditures related to that. So a couple of things for 2021 is we do anticipate having to have a transfer from the general fund into this fund in order to meet the expenditure obligations as well as maintain a fund balance to manage any potential emergencies that might arise. We also are anticipating in 2020, and we did budget for a $50,000 transfer as well to address any of the expenditure needs and to maintain that minimum fund balance. So I just wanted to kind of remind people, you know, there were some pretty significant expenditures the last few years related to that property. Certainly not enough to address some of the other issues or concerns that we might have, but we did have a pretty large expenditure related to gas lines, I believe. And then we did have some roof damage when we had some storms in the last few years that fortunately we did have insurance that kind of managed that. So just a few large expenditures we've had in the last couple of years. So yeah, if you have any specific questions about Geneva Village, I'm happy to answer that. We
Okay,
don't have a-
council, is there any questions?
Sorry, we just don't have a particular ask or policy question on this one this evening.
Okay, that was just an information.
Yes.
Great, well, thank you. Our next item.
All right, moving on. So the next one that we have is some of our other funds that we maintain. And these are what we call special revenue funds. One of them is the Conservation Trust Fund. This is a fund that we're required by state statute to maintain separately from any other funds. And we have specific uses that we're allowed to spend these monies on. These revenues come from lottery proceeds. So when we have a large Powerball, we see an increase in revenues related to that, just because there's more sales. So it does provide us money that we can use specifically for acquisition, development, and maintenance of conservation sites or capital improvements and maintenance of recreational sites. So in the past, we've used a number of funds at the library and at the museum, and also some of our open space areas. For 2021, the projects that we anticipate are some security system upgrades at the library and museum. And then we also allocate annually $100,000 related to parkland maintenance. And so this is just helping the city maintain some of those open space areas. And then we sometimes use a portion of this related to the South Platte Park agreement that we have with South Suburban. If there's not enough funds in open space or one of the other areas, we will utilize some of the Conservation Trust Fund. And then we also pay about $21,000 annually related to rent over at the Art Depot area when we did the Littleton Trail, I believe is the name of it. So those are some of the expenditures that we have in 2021 out of the Conservation Trust Fund. You see before you a 5-year plan. It's pretty stable. We have some future projects planned, and we continuously look at this fund to utilize it for any of those capital improvements in those areas that we're allowed to use it on.
Great. Councilmember Elrod does have a question.
Okay.
When I think of Conservation Trust Fund, I think about, conservation of public spaces, open space, parks, and which we have here. So you mentioned security at the library. So in lieu of security at the library, couldn't that security at the library be something potentially covered under CARES Act? Given in part we have to manage how many people are coming in or out. I feel like I vaguely remember there was some ask related to security for the library there. So, and part of the reason I'm questioning where we're spending that $196,000 that I see in public buildings is because we know, from South Suburban, they're in a very difficult financial situation, which is going to impact a lot of the parks, trail projects that we rely on. So I'm just a little bit cautious about where we're spending this money, knowing that we need to look at Conservation Trust Fund, in conjunction with our open space fund and our other funds that affect our parks and trails. So maybe Mark, I don't know if you can speak to the.
Yeah, I think it's a fair concern. I think staff shares that. I think the investment we've made into the buildings, certainly the Conservation Trust allows that. But I think if we had, for example, a better resource in the Capital Project Fund for just buildings in general, I think we'd be recommending to the council that maybe we do look differently at Conservation Trust. So I think in the longer run, maybe there is a better answer here if we can solve one side of the equation there with the Capital Project Fund. I do believe that we did ask, maybe if Ashley or Tiffany can remember for us, didn't we make a request here for CARES Act?
We did for door security. However, the camera security, we actually did talk about looking at CARES Act for that, but knowing there were so many needs for that too, and knowing that Conservation Trust would be a possibility for the cameras. We didn't come to you guys for CARES. And so we definitely appreciate your guidance for knowing if there is a preference. Again, knowing that we're running into that December 30th date for CARES Act use, and we would have to have the project implemented. The good news is that we've already scoped it out, so we know exactly what we need to do. We would just need the time to get it done.
So if I may suggest,
Thank you.
my suggestion might be is that we look a little deeper into the CARES Act and see what it is we might be able to do this year to relieve the pressure on the Conservation Trust, free up some money. If council sees that as a priority, I'd be happy to do that.
I support that.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Is there any opposition to that, council? Okay, looks like we're all in favor of that decision.
That's all we have on the Conservation Trust Fund. So moving along.
Special revenue.
All right. So next we have the Open Space Fund, and the Open Space Fund is derived from open space taxes from Arapahoe County and Jefferson County. There's a 0.25% tax for Arapahoe County and a 0.5% tax for Jefferson County. We get about $1 million from Arapahoe County annually, and Jefferson County is about $95,000. And we do have several projects planned. I will caveat the Open Space Fund with the fact that we have policy questions related to this that do have a budget proviso based on the conversations and issues that South Suburban is having currently. We do partner with them on probably 95% of our open space projects. And with their constraints currently, we did put a budget proviso on the Open Space Fund itself. And so just kind of a recap, you can use it to purchase, develop, and maintain open space, although the maintenance is limited to 20% a year of the tax revenues. And then also you can use it on outdoor recreation facilities. We do have an open space task force that did develop a method to define some what I call buckets of uses of open space funds. So you do see that at the bottom of your slide there that kind of separates reserves annually based on these categories. So again, we do have a budget proviso on this fund itself. And so if you have any specific questions, I know Keith is here and Mark would be happy to help as well.
Mark.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, let me just add a little bit more to this. And we have certainly two council liaisons to South Suburban who can maybe add to this conversation. We're in a real unusual position here on the Open Space Fund because our traditional partner, South Suburban, they're not considering a budget until the first part of next year. And so that's why I'm recommending we just put a budget proviso on the entire fund. And so that staff really can't spend any money on this until we sort out some of these priorities with South Suburban. We are recommending that we go ahead and appropriate the total amount in per Tiffany's budget proposal here. But in the end, we need to shuffle the projects around once we understand the financial situation of South Suburban. Plus, we have a couple of other issues that I know Council is just vaguely aware of, and I'd like to have Keith Reister comment on here, both Ridgeview and Kettering. We have a water rights problem here that the staff has been pursuing. And if you're Mayor and Council, if you're okay, I'd like Keith to spend a couple of minutes summarizing where we're at with this water rights problem.
Yes.
I need to make sure I unmuted myself there. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and just give you a couple of quick snippets sort of related to all of this.
Keith, let me interrupt just 1 second. Sure. I'm sorry, I skipped Councilmember Elrod. She had her hand up.
You can go first.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Keith. Thank you.
I think I might bring up what she's going to ask as my best guess. So a couple of things that, first off, in the memo that I prepped for y'all in the packet, I would like to encourage council to start having discussions with the Arapahoe County Commissioners. The open space tax expires in 2022, and all of this funding that we're talking about would go away without that tax. And it's time to probably discuss what's important to Littleton related to that open space tax language. As Mark alluded to and Tiffany alluded to, there's a 20% cap on operations and maintenance. And for a city, for somebody like, somebody out in Eastern Arapahoe County who has plenty of stuff to buy, that's great. In Littleton, that's not the case anymore. The properties are few and far between. And so having money stacked up for acquisitions has limited use for us. So we probably want to engage in that discussion at some point. Overall, from an open space perspective, we're guided by the 2016 council adopted Trails and Recreation Master Plan. It's approaching 5 years, probably time to maybe start looking at an update to that plan, not an overhaul, but an update. And in discussions with South Suburban, they had planned to update theirs targeted for 2022, but that may be pushed out due to COVID. And so obviously we would like to, have those not necessarily at the same time, but in tandem. So we're working together at some level to make sure that our priorities with their priorities fit together appropriately. So that's kind of out there at the same time. What comes of that is we have not updated our operational agreement with them in forever, basically, like they have with other communities. And it's probably time for us to, coinciding with those two plans, to create a new operating agreement between us and South Suburban, which much more clearly defines expectations. I mean, we've done a number of things from a performance objective, like designing projects in 1 year and building them the next year or the year after, as opposed to trying to do all of that in 1 year, which is the past practice. So we're trying to improve that, but both organizations would like to move to a better operational agreement, which will do multiple things. It'll reinforce our goals. It'll make sure that we have concurrence about where we're going with our partner in South Suburban. And it'll also provide clarity for council in enunciating your vision of how you want execution to occur. So that's something that is on the radar screen as well. To go to the water issue, Reed and Mark and I have spent a fair amount of time talking about this. The city, much like we've talked about in other infrastructure areas, we do not have a water resources master plan, which, as we've talked about other issues, water, medians, all that is tied to that. And we have a very small water portfolio in terms of water shares and water rights. And part of that is because in 1972, we basically turned our entire system over to Denver Water because we didn't have the money to fix it after the flood. And that's how we moved into that agreement. So we would recommend as a staff that we go through the process of working with water attorneys, water engineering firms in the community to decide how we want to utilize our water effectively. As small as it is, we still need to do that because this continues to come up over and over again. And we're going to be talking about continuing drought conditions and all of those types of things as we go forward. The cost on that, which I didn't put in the memo, which I told you I was getting, is $100,000 to $150,000 to do, which is pretty typical for a master plan. That's actually a pretty small number based on the fact that we really don't have a lot of water. One of the things that's related to that is we have two current facilities that are in our parks that do not have water rights associated with them that people want to see filled and they want to see water in them. But if you don't have any water to put in them, it doesn't really matter. One of those is Kettering. Over the last decade plus, the city has spent a fair amount of money lining Kettering, both bottom and sides, to try and increase water retention. They developed a well from an old set of water rights that were affiliated with the library, but that well will only produce about enough water to fill 30 to 40% of that pond on an average year. And we used to get supplemental water into Kettering for decades from the High Line. Well, as we all know, the High Line is running very minimally and in the future probably won't run at all. This year, there's only going to be a single run in the spring, and because of drought declaration, there will be no fall run. In our 72 water agreement, there is no obligation for Denver Water to provide us water. It says they'll do their best, but there's no provision that says they must. And then last year, the state engineer's office said that the water that's been flowing from Highline into Kettering is in violation of state water regulations because there is no downstream augmentation plan. And since Highline is considered irrigation water, it can flow to Kettering, but it must flow out within 72 hours. That's the law. And that's obviously not what was occurring. So Denver Water got a show cause order from the state last fall related to that. So right now, we don't have enough water to fill Kettering going forward. So we're going to need to talk about how we remedy that problem as part of our water resources plan. And that might include shrinking the size of the facility. There's not a lot of water available in that basin. That's been looked at in the past. So those are things that we would have to take a look at. The other one is the pond in Ridgeview Park. The area around Ridgeview Park developed between the 60s and the 90s. There's a string of ponds in there that are below the high line. Ridgeview just happens to be in our park. Ridgeview Pond has never had water rights. That's been confirmed by multiple chunks of water attorney research. And it fluctuates a great deal because the only thing that's feeding it is basically storm runoff. There's some seepage that might come from the ponds upstream. There might have been seepage in the past that came from Highline, but obviously with no flows in the Highline, there's not going to be any seepage. The neighborhood around there is not happy with the fluctuating water levels and the decreasing water levels out there. So they've been approaching staff and some council members about what do we do about that. So as part of that, we took a look at that, and some of the options in the city ditch, which is owned by Englewood and Denver, we have a small set of shares, some of which are used to irrigate Geneva Park and the lot around Littleton Center. And there was the question about, can we convey some of that water to Kettering or Ridgeview? Well, in Kettering's case, in Ridgeview's case, the closest point of the Highline there is on the other side of Santa Fe, and it's undergrounded. So we'd have to pump the water under Santa Fe, under the railroad tracks, and uphill to Ridgeview. And Kettering's even further. So we have an engineering firm taking a look at what the feasibility of that is and the cost that would to do that, just at a super high level. That's currently underway, not done yet. One of the questions that's come up is, can you have Denver Water fill the pond, do a one-time fill? It would take about 1.6 million gallons to fill that pond, even if it's partially full. And somewhere in the past, they lined the bottom of Ridgeview Pond, but not the sides. So to compare that, so like Kettering is a bathtub. They line the sides, the bottom and the sides. Ridgeview is like a laundry basket. Solid bottom, holes in the sides is kind of the easiest way for me to describe it. And so we, in the process of looking at that, we checked with Denver Water, and they said they would consider it, but they would not fill the pond under drought conditions, which we're kind of at this point in time. They would only ever do it once, and if they would only ever do it once if there was already identified plan for what you're going to do in the future. Not maybe we're going to do a plan, but it has to be in place. The cost to do that, because you'd have to run it through a hydrant and dechlorinate it, is a minimum of $30,000 to fill that pond. And in comparison to that, just on the legal fees side related to water rights this year, we've spent more than $20,000. We're going to be close to that number related to the engineering work to look at moving water from the city ditch to any of these locations. In addition to that, is kind of where we're at. One of the questions that's come up out of the neighborhood is, and I'll phrase it kind of like they ask it, you have X $2 million plus in open space reserve. Why don't you just use a small portion of that to fill our pond? After reviewing the legal components of that, that would only come out of the 20%. And so the answer is that would either have to come out of the money that's being set aside for South Platte Park, or it would have to come out of the general fund. It's not an option to pay for that out of open space reserves or funds. So that's kind of where we are from a staff perspective. Reed can jump in as well here on the legal side, but we're going to recommend, it's not in as a budget item at this point, but we're going to be targeting a discussion about doing a water resources plan for the city. So a lot of this is clear for us as well as all of our successors in the future and for the community. And we really don't have an answer for Ridgeview or Kettering at this point in time, but we're engaging in a great deal of due diligence right now to try and identify all the potential options and what the costs are, at least from a ballpark perspective on those. So that's kind of where we're at on those. Reed, do you want to add to that at all, since you see some of the other bills that come in?
No, I think everything you said is straight. Nope.
Looks good out there at DIA. I can see that from your background. So,
Yep.
With that,
Line is only 2 minutes.
Yeah. So, Mayor, that's really what I wanted to just give an overview of. That's in the memo that was contained there. As an FYI for everybody here, I alerted the Ridgeview residents that we are going to kind of overview this tonight and share the memo that's with them, that you have with them today, so that they know what the status of this discussion is.
Okay.
So.
Thank you very much, Keith, for that not so uplifting info.
Thank you, Dr.
You have replaced the city manager with that role. Thank you. To Mark, I have a question. Now, that wasn't a part of our parking lot item for open space. Is that correct? You are muted.
Sorry, but I think it emphasizes why we have to have a budget proviso over the entire fund. This issues we've been trying to sort through, plus the fact South Suburban is just not in a position to set a budget. And I think a lot of this conversation is probably going to play out towards the end of the year, maybe into the first part of next year, before we can, council feels confident they can make some real decisions about projects.
Great, thank you. And we do have a couple questions yet, and we still have yet to cover impact fees, some grant funds, then our 7 parking lot items. So we're starting to run out of time, just to make everybody aware. Let's go to Council Member Elrod and the Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm fine with this being a budget proviso for a lot of those reasons. And also, my question is actually on, we have several projects that we've submitted as it relates to trails. For example, the mineral station shed project that you just submitted, Keith, to Dr. Cog. So in theory, we could use these funds instead of tapping into our capital funds, because again, our capital funds are so limited. We're going to have a much bigger conversation about that. So when we think about even open space, this is another way that we can think about our open space funds. I know historically it's always been a partnership with South Suburban, but maybe we can use these funds in other types of projects that maybe we hadn't considered in the past. Is that correct?
Yes, I think it's time. I think we should add to the conversation what Keith was touching on about maybe an update to our Parks Master Plan, working in the Transportation Master Plan as well, trails, pedestrian access, those things. So I think there is merit in a larger conversation about multiple funds and how they can achieve some of these goals.
Follow-up conversation.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. We've started to move in that direction, actually, as we've discussed a couple of those projects. I mean, the Rio Grande Bridge project with the pedestrian underpass, the bicycle and pedestrian portion of that is open space funds that we've been able to acquire from the county. So, it's mixing those sources together to maximize our opportunity, I think, is really the place we've got to head over time.
My follow-up is then, are you looking to do this so I know the Parks and Master Plan, we want to align better with South Suburban, but are you prepared to at least start on the operating agreement this in 2021 so that we can at least establish, kind of rules of engagement?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's plenty of opportunity there to begin that conversation. I think in the end, we just need to sync it up with the update to the Parks Master Plan. So yes, definitely agree with that.
Great.
Mark, I just want to make sure. So you're just looking for a direction to put this into one of our budget provisos.
Yeah, I think that's really the question to council. Does that sound like a sound strategy at this point?
Yeah. Okay. Council, is there anybody that has any issues with it not going to a budget proviso? Anybody? Mark, I believe all councils, Carol, where are you on this? Thumbs up. Looks like everybody is willing to move it on to budget proviso.
Yeah, appreciate that, council. Yeah. It's a little unusual, but thank you.
How long will it take us, Mark, to get through the impact and also the grant funds? What kind of time are you looking at there?
Let's ask Tiffany.
I can do it in 2 minutes or less.
All right, then let's for both or one?
Both, let's go.
Let's do it. Impact fees.
Clock up. All right. impact fees. So the city currently has 5 impact fees. We used to have fire impact fees, but we no longer do. We really quickly just have a few projects that we have planned for 2021. What you're looking at now is a 5-year plan on all impact fees. And the one main thing is we are currently probably in the next couple of days going to award the impact fee study contract. And so we will definitely get that underway and hope to have that completed close to the end of the year. And that's just going to assess our current methodology, our current impact fees, and hopefully provide any additional impact fees that council may want to implement in the future. A couple of projects that we have for 2021 is mostly related to the transportation. And we have a fiber optic grant that we did receive. And so that was projected to be in year 2024 or 2025. But because we got that grant, we are moving forward to 2021 for that grant. It's $135,400 is the city's match. The full grant is over $600,000 or $700,000 if I recall correctly. And then the other 2 big items out of the transportation impact fee funds are matching grants related to county line expansion and then the Santa Fe and Mineral intersection. This will be the first year for both of those grants. These are phased in grants. We do have a concern that we may not be able to fund all of them at this time. And so that's one of the issues that we're going to be addressing over the next couple of years related to the Capital Projects Fund. But those are really the only projects that we have planned for 2021 out of the impact fees. These, we have seen a significant decrease in revenues in 2020 related to COVID. It's related to building permits that are pulled, and with construction kind of at a halt, we haven't seen hardly any of those estimates that we projected in 2020. Are there any particular questions on impact fees?
Yes, let's go with Councilmember Elrod.
There went my 2 minutes.
I know.
I had a question, I forgot it, but now I'll ask the other question. Wait, which one? I forgot my question. I'll have to, here it is. Okay, sorry. The $2 million, so Keith has stated that we still haven't, found, we haven't earmarked the $2 million that was for the, for Santa Fe, for the project. So are you saying we can actually use these impact fees to fulfill that $2 million share?
That would be ideal if we had enough impact fees coming in to pay for that. That's one of our issues right now is we don't have a lot of growth. We don't have a lot of projects coming into Littleton, and that the impact fee revenues are dependent on that. And so we're just not certain what revenues we're going to see from those impact fees. They fluctuate so much, and especially with COVID right now, we're just not seeing those revenues that we had anticipated.
But we do have a fund balance of 2.7 at the end of this year, right?
Yes, but that's across all 5 types of impact fee funds. You can't use police-related impact fee funds for transportation projects and vice versa.
I see.
Yeah, and there is a detail of each impact fee in your budget packet, if I recall.
And how much of this 1.8 million in public building has already been encumbered or expensed?
So I might have to let Keith answer that because that's related to the citywide building improvements that we were anticipating.
Sure. That was the money we had set aside that was mostly targeted at the Littleton Center capacity improvements, since that money's restricted to capacity improvements. Our intent when we hired our architect and our CMGC was to proceed with that 1.8, but we've redirected them on the short cycle to take care of the CARES Act money between now and December 30th. And then once design is completed in the next couple of weeks for the council chamber in detail, we'll move to figuring out the path forward for the balance of the project work at Littleton Center, which is that 1.8.
So is any of this encumbered yet?
Tiffany has to answer that part of it.
So it actually was a carryover from 2019 into 2020. We have the funds earmarked, but we have not entered into any agreements to move forward with that, from what I understand.
So they're not encumbered yet?
No.
All right. We do have Councilmember Fay with a question. You are muted. There we
Trying
go.
to be myself with 25 minutes left and a fair amount of agenda left, might we want to try to streamline our comments and participation? We've already put in 7.5 hours this week in online meetings for council. I would really be disappointed to have to extend this meeting in order to get through it. So I'm pretty.
It's likely we're gonna have to schedule Tuesday, but let's keep moving ahead and at least get till 9 o'clock, see how far we get at 9 o'clock, and then we'll go from there. Okay, but I think that is a concern we have going right now. We have a lot to cover. Okay, we have City Manager. Did you want to make a comment?
Just quickly on the building improvements at City Hall. I think obviously we've talked about this in the past. Lots of changes have occurred on how we view the space as a result of COVID. This is the remote working issue. And so I would like to come back at some point with council and kind of review the scope of that project, because I do think it warrants exactly what are we doing to build practical capacity at this point, if that's fair.
Okay, great. So, are you looking for some direction on this, Mark?
Sorry, I don't think so on this one, Tiffany. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's, Tiffany, that was far more than 2 minutes for both items.
Sorry.
Okay, so we're moving on to the grant funds.
Right, and I don't have a slide for the grants, but just quickly, we have a number of grants in 2021, specifically the Platte Canyon Bowls and the Platte Canyon and Mineral Intersections. Those are 100% federally funded. Those two projects alone are about $2.3 million. And then we have our standard grants that we have each year related to police overtime, LEAF grant, there's some bail money, things like that, that are just standard that we anticipate each year. And then we do have the fiber optic grant that I mentioned earlier, where we're paying a portion of that out of, I can't remember what fund it is now, but one of the other funds we're paying the match from. And so the grants fund is all revenues will equal expenditures, because it's a revenue coming in from the grant and it's an expenditure going out. We just have to maintain those separately as a separate fund. And that's really all I have on the other funds. So I think now, if you'd like, we can go ahead and move into some of our parking lot items, unless you have any specific questions.
Great, thank you. Let's do it.
All right. So you do have a separate presentation related to our follow-up items. So quickly, parking lot items were local partnership funding, LIRC, the Littleton Immigrant Resource Center, a fire commemoration, some information related to museum fees, the neighborhood grant programs we provide, the print shop that we have in-house currently, and then we wanted to kind of revisit the policy questions. Some additional discussion that we were going to hope to get to this evening was related to capital projects and how what funding source we might have in the future. And then BIDs and DDAs, or the Business Improvement Districts or Downtown Development Authority. And then this concept of having an additional appropriation in 2021 if revenues warrant. So quickly for local partnership funding, this was one that was asked to be as a parking lot item. Currently, staff have recommended we have this amount at $65,000 for 2021. This is a reduction from the prior year. What we would do is we would open this application process in the fourth quarter if council supports moving forward with this, and then we would bring the award determinations to council at a later date. And these are a reminder of some of the organizations that we've helped in the past, the Arapahoe Rescue Patrol, Graceful Cafe, Littleton North Promise, organizations like that. So the question we have for council this evening is, do you support this program moving forward in the current state that it is, in the current method, at $65,000?
All right, so we have a decision to make, council. We'll start with, if we could have council pull back up, please, that'd be great.
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Elrod, we'll start with you.
I don't support this, not because I don't think our nonprofits need support, but I don't support the methodology that we use. I would actually recommend that we, instead of putting the 65,000 into this grant program, put it within the CARES funding program that we now have open for the nonprofits anyway. And, you know, I would suggest if we want to, if we're really wanting to ensure there's a level of investment in our nonprofits, I'd rather put it into the CARES funding, use the CARES funding for this and the criteria of CARES funding this year. The applications go out in Q4. At that point, we might as well.
Good. All right. Yeah, thank you very much. Councilmember Grove?
How much was in this fund before?
Before, it depends on the year, up to about 100,000.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have anything they want to comment on at this point? Councilmember Fay?
I am not in favor of this fund, primarily because we haven't asked for any accountability in the past, and I think we still aren't. And I am just so much not in favor of giving out money without accountability.
Okay,
so I'm a no on this.
Thank you. Councilmember Milliman?
So I have a question. With these groups that were shown, did they apply to become a partner with this for this funding? How does it work? How do we decide on who those partners are with?
Mark, you want to go ahead and address that, please?
Yeah, actually, let's have Sama Fox respond to that. She has been on point here for the last couple of years.
Council. So yes, there is an application process. They apply for the funds every year. They include a summary of how they intend to use them, though I think a lot of these funds are used for operating purposes. And then council makes a determination on the awards organization by organization.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Driscoll. Do you have any comment?
Yeah, this is the same fund that helps fund Western Welcome Week. Is that correct? Sam?
That is correct. We ask our in-kind service operations like Western Welcome Week to apply through this as well.
You know, we've been discussing this for years and years, and we've set the standard prior councils have, and you know, these companies now depend on these funds. It's part of their budget, and so I'm definitely in favor of continuing that support of these companies.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Milliman?
With Councilmember Driscoll, I support this. I support funding this, continue this.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Elrod. Oh, you already commented. I'm sorry, but you already said thank you very much. And Councilmember Fay has already commented. Councilmember Grove.
I support it.
Great. Councilmember Milliman, we have Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I absolutely support this. And in fact, the only reason I'm not speaking out in opposition to the reduced amount of funds is because we've been fortunate enough to be able to pass along some CARES Act funds to our nonprofit community.
Great, thank you. And I'm the last one, and I too am in support of it this year. It's gone down, and it's something we do need to look at year after year as a council. This year with so much CARE fund out there, there's been a lot of assistance, but I'm in favor of it for this year at 60, whatever the total amount was. So I think that's it. Does anybody else have any final comment? Okay. Mark, I think you have your direction on that particular item.
I do, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Great. Thank you. Move on to our next one.
All right, the next one that we have before you is the Littleton Immigrant Resource Center, LIRC. And staff's recommendation was a service level reduction for 2021. Essentially, this would have eliminated the citizenship program. We did go back and look at the costs related to this particular program, and it was a reduction of about $68,375. There are some other service options in the metro area, and we just did want to highlight that we are still retaining 4 of the 5 current components. So this is just the citizenship program. And I think we have Tim here if you have any specific questions.
All right, we'll start with Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I spoke with staff. I'm satisfied that the citizenship program is available enough elsewhere in the metro area that I'm okay with the reduction. I think we're keeping as much of the program as is necessary to let it fulfill its mission. So,
so you were in favor of going forward with what's proposed?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll.
You're muted, Pat.
He may have froze up on us. Let's give him a chance there to come back in a minute. Let's go to Councilmember Millen.
How about that?
Pat is back. He is back.
I'm sorry. I never unmuted myself. Hey, Tim, can you give us an update as to what the group has done to go out and grant funds, raise money on their own and not have to rely on the city?
Yeah, Pat, that's a good question. They've done quite a bit with mostly increasing fees, bringing them more to a market level to make it much more in keeping with what other organizations in the Denver metro area. We were kept artificially low under the parameters of the grant. The other thing that they have done is received 2 or 3 very small grants, somewhere in the $5,000 range. So not a ton of success on either one of or on the grant side of things. Certainly more on bringing in revenue from the fee side.
So the cities
there just are not a lot. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think I missed the September 8th meeting when this was brought up, so I apologize to council. But this is a $68,000 cost to the city. Is that about right, Tiffany?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to hold off.
It's more than $68,000 that we're funding. What was your question again, Patrick?
Yes. What's the city funding to keep this program alive?
So this particular program that we are not recommending moving forward in 2021 was about $68,000. We still have the other 4 programs, and if I recall, I'm trying to think, I want to say it was somewhere around 130,000 for the other 4, but I could double check.
That sounds about right, Tiffany.
Okay, thank you. Patrick, where were you at on this particular?
I'm okay letting this program go.
So as proposed, that's a yes?
Yes, that's a yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Milliman.
I would support this too as well. And Mark, could you speak to, I know with the proposal here, we're funding 4 out of the 5 parts of the program. If by some miraculous, I can't talk, I'm sorry, I've been up since 4 this morning, change of events with, the budget, would we be able to bring back that funding ever again for that portion of the project or the program?
Sure. I think that was part of the discussion we had here earlier in September. I think my suggestion is this 2021 special appropriation and allow council to evaluate our revenue, assuming the economy picks up. This certainly could be a program that the council could consider to bring back if that's your desire.
Okay, thank you.
So Kelly, you're in favor or not in favor of moving forward with the proposed reduction?
Yes, I'm gonna, hold my nose, but yes, I'm in favor.
Great, thank you. All right, and I'll just go through who else we have. We haven't heard from Council Member Elrod. I'll get myself in there.
Based on actually the comments that Mayor Pro Tem Malin made and an understanding of these programs better as well for myself, I'm fine with the recommendation being proposed.
Good, thank you. And I just want to comment in there, that is in the 2019 budget, City Council had moved to essentially end the program, the funding of it, with the final year being 2020, I believe it was. Tim, is that correct?
What council did in 2018 at the very end of the year when the federal grant ran out was they agreed to put $125,000 in, which covered citizenship and a piece of the legal services part of the program. The proviso was that they were supposed to go out and try to find funding to offset that additional city money. Ultimately, they came up with about 50% of it, so it was probably in the $65,000 range that the city was still on the hook for those two components.
Yeah, and I think now at this point that at that 2018, thanks for that correction, was that the idea was that the city would get out of that program altogether, and the expectation was is that the program would find its own funding, and they've had 2 years now to get funding, and apparently there aren't people out there willing to keep it going at the rate that it is now. It appears. And also with the looking at the numbers that you provided is it's way below 50% even on serving the citizens or the residents in Littleton. So we're providing this for people, almost 55% of the people outside the city. In some cases, almost 80%.
Yeah, the two pieces, Mayor, that were grant funded under the federal grant, the citizenship classes and the legal services, because of the requirements of the grant, that had to be open to anyone in the who could.
Right. Well, now at this point, though, it's the citizens of Littleton are funding it through their taxes, but they're not stepping up with their pocketbooks, say, to fund it. And that kind of tells me a little bit about where the citizens are right now for this thing. Even as great as the program is, and believe you me, my family has paid into this program quite a bit over the years. And I think in lieu of with our other programs that we're cutting for citizens and residents in Littleton that actually live here and benefit from those programs, and many of those are at the library already, we're cutting. At this point, I'm in favor of moving forward with the proposed amount with the idea that this thing is eventually going to have to be funded by some other way other than the city of Littleton. So I'm going to go down as a yes on this thing. I haven't heard yet from, let's see, Councilmember Grove.
I'm a yes, and I echo the reasons that Scott stated earlier.
Thank you. Let's see, Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Tim, I just want to ask a clarifying question. I know there's some percentages reflected in our council materials about how many, or what percentage rather, of people utilizing the LIRC services coming from outside of the city. But I just want to be clear that, at least with regard to the legal services, that program's effectively self-sustaining. The people utilizing it are paying fees toward it. And it's paying its own way largely. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Mayor Pro Tem. In fact, that's the reason that we decided to opt that piece of it in, because it's the largest revenue generator component. It's also one of the only low cost options for legal services in the Denver metro area.
Thanks.
What does the total program cost? $350 a year, was it?
Well, I did want to kind of clarify. So the 4 programs that we do currently have in the budget, it costs about $146,000 roughly for those 4 programs. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Let's see, Scott, you still have your hand up. Did you have something else? No.
No, sorry, we'll go I'm not in a classroom, and after you get called on, your hand doesn't go down. Push the button to make it go down.
Class. Okay, Councilmember Milliman.
I just wanted to say that even though it looks like this program might be serving only a small percentage of folks within the city of Littleton, it shows that we're a partner with our surrounding communities and with the region. I think it's a very vitally important program. It's a small amount of money to help a group of people that need that help. So I think it's really, really important. And I do think if we can find a way to try to help continue funding LIRC, then we should do that.
Yeah, and that's all very true, Kelly. It's just that the public has not stepped up privately to do it, and that's the concern. And we're cutting money from other programs. I think the program is wonderful. That's why I contribute to it as a family. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question. Scott said this is a self-funding program. Well, clearly it's not.
No, sir.
Tim, so did I misunderstand that question?
Just the legal services.
Okay, I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're charged the fee for a percentage of a legal fee.
Yeah, I'm with
it doesn't entirely cover it, I don't believe, but I think that's it. Councilmember Fay, did I hear from you on this?
I have not spoken on it yet. I'm in favor of going forward as the rest of council is suggesting. My perspective is coming from performance-based budgeting, where staff, whom we pay to look at this kind of thing, recommended that we not fund this part of it.
Okay. Thank you. So, Mark, I believe did you receive your direction you're looking for there? It looks like it, because all members are in favor of funding it as proposed.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Okay. And Council, we do have a few more parking lot items. So our choice is going to be that we continue, or we end up having another meeting on another night, and that's next Tuesday, the night we already have as a fifth Tuesday off. So if we can get through this quickly, we won't have to do this again on Tuesday. So let's keep moving. Councilmember Grove, you had a question?
No, I just like the idea of moving forward and maybe not having to meet on Tuesday.
Yeah, let's try to do it in 30 minutes or so.
Let's get it done as quick as we can here. All right, so we are now on the fire monument, and whatever it was we were going to do there.
Yeah, so another parking lot item is the fire commemoration. This was a policy question in 2020 to include $50,000 related to commissioning an art installation commemorating the history of the Littleton Fire Rescue. And with COVID, this was an area that we did not see that we could move forward just because of staffing limitations and things like that. And so we did remove this or put this project to a halt in 2020, and we did not include this in the 2021 budget. So the ask for you this evening is council's direction. Would you like to include this $50,000 in the 2021 budget, or leave as is where it's not in there?
Okay, so that's where we are, Council. Patrick, you had your hand already up. I don't know if you meant to have it up.
Yes, I was just going to ask, I was highly in favor of this museum. Obviously, we had some setbacks here, and I understand the reason we took it out. Can we reduce, can we build up, is 50 grand the amount we're ultimately looking, or is it more than that?
It really depends on the scope of the project, Pat. The
right.
$50,000 is a good number. It really depends on the material, probably more than anything else. The location might have a small determining factor, but it's mostly going to be the material. You could easily, you can certainly put out an RFQ that has a not to exceed number.
I would be in favor of maybe doing $10,000 for the next 5 years and in our budget and make this a 2025 project or something like that.
Okay, and then I'm up next, and then Councilmember Grove, then Fay. And where I am on this, I just don't see a rush to do this right now. And I think because of our the economic instability, I'm just not in favor of funding this for this year. It can be funded next year or the following year or any other year. But I think this coming year is not the year to address this. It doesn't have to happen this coming year. So on this one, my direction would be a no on it. I'm going to go to Councilmember Elrod. You're up next, and then Grove.
There was a comment made that one of the reasons it was not done this year was because of staffing. So you didn't have the staffing support to make this happen. Do you have the staffing, Tim, next year that you would be able to execute on this?
Yeah, and if council wants to move forward with it, we'll send it into the Fine Arts Board. We've already written the RFQ. We could certainly make any adjustments that we need to the budget. So yeah, we can take it forward. It's really the process of interviewing and awarding a commission, and then kind of managing the installation. It's not that there's no staff time involved in it, but it's less than it would be if we were trying to do the project ourselves.
Okay, so the staffing is no longer a factor in this, as far as the reason why it was not done this year.
Yeah, I think we have the capacity if council wants us to move forward on it.
Sure, and I do know the Fine Arts Board already has, actually they had a lot of this already done. So my recommendation is to support this for a couple of reasons. One, I do think timing is relevant here. The whole reason we were doing the fire commemorative piece is to kind of mark that, they stepped away, or our fire services changed in the past year. So there is a sense of make it relevant to the time of when these events happened. As far as the 50,000, I do support the 50,000, where the Fine Arts Board, the discussions at the Fine Arts Board is, what would truly be a very worthwhile commemorative piece would likely be more than 50,000. And that's where, where they were heading is to really hope to bring in some other partners to this. And I know, Pat, that you had reached out to South Metro Fire, and we know that there is an interest in the community to contribute to this. So it could really be a true showcase of public art in our city. And especially in times now where we can't go into the museums, we can't go into these indoor spaces, this public art becomes even much more desirable and impactful to our enjoyment of our community.
Thank you. Councilmember Grove.
I support leaving this out of the 2020 budget because of COVID and other priorities, and we can look at it maybe in the future.
Thank you. Anybody else want to move on before before we start going around the hook? Okay, yeah, and Councilmember Fay. Sorry.
Yeah, I had my hand up. You listed.
Yep, you do.
A couple of things. I served as the council liaison to the Fine Arts Board for a couple of years. One of the things I learned there is that maintenance of outdoor art is quite a problem. There's no budget for it, and outdoor art does need to be maintained. And so this will be an ongoing expense for us through all eternity with all the other outdoor art we have. Performance-based budgeting is something that council enthusiastically agreed to. And by considering funding this, we are violating our own pledge to adhere to performance-based budgeting. And we can't expect performance-based budgeting to work if we come up with exceptions ourselves. I agree with the statement that $50,000 is just a beginning. Again, from what I learned when I was on the Fine Arts Board as the council liaison, is $50,000 would not even begin to be enough to do this really. It would get started. Our record of getting partners to partner with this kind of thing, like LIRC, is that people don't step up. So if we step up for this, we are stepping up for at least $150,000 to get it done. And this is a horrible time to be doing that or cutting other things.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Milliman, let's hear from you.
I'm on the fence on this because I appreciate and support the arts in our community, but $50,000 for is it going to be a statue or what's the thinking, Tim?
We don't know, Kelly, and good question. I mean, when we sent out the RFQ, we would get back proposals from artists. It could be a statue. Certainly is not limited to that, and that would largely guide, because Carol's right. There is certainly ongoing maintenance for any kind of outdoor artwork. It depends significantly what that material is, as does the cost. If you're talking about a bronze, $50,000 is probably your starting point for something of a monument scale. If you're talking about something else, certainly you can get it for less than that. But until we got the returns from the RFQ, we wouldn't know what exactly it was going to be.
Is it going to be a big piece of art, or is it, and do you know kind of where you're going to locate it?
We don't have a specific location. A Fine Arts Board had, I think, 3 or 4 places nailed down as probably their top possibilities: City Center, downtown, Bega Park. There's a little extension of land out at Santa Fe and Littleton Boulevard that's a possibility. They're looking for kind of a central location, but that would somewhat be determined again by the size and scope of the project.
Okay.
Where are you on this, Kelly?
I'm going to hold off just now. I want to hear what everybody else has to say. I'm really on the fence.
All right, thanks. Then we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem.
I think 100 years of Littleton Fire is absolutely worth commemorating, but for me, now is not the time to fund this. I think we need to make sure to keep it in mind for years when the budget has more flexibility.
Thank you. Council Member Fay?
But we also have the fact that the firefighters themselves who were with Littleton wanted really badly to leave Littleton. They fought for that. They fought for that and they fought for that. And so the idea of commemorating them doesn't make sense to me because they wanted out so badly. They truly disliked Littleton and made that really clear. And so then to put up a statue or something in their honor just doesn't make sense because they really didn't like Littleton.
Okay. Thank you. Council Member Milliman?
I do think it would be important to commemorate the Littleton Fire Department because they did play such a major role in the history of our community. But I have a question. South Metro Fire, have they expressed any kind of an interest in maybe helping? Would they be interested, or could they even help us, meet us halfway or fund this project for us, maybe in full?
Kelly, I don't know the answer to that. We hadn't gotten that far in the process, but I think Councilmember Driscoll had talked with South Metro, so he may be able to respond.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Yes, they have definite interest in helping us out. Cindy's our new liaison for the city, and I would recommend reaching out to Cindy and let's have that serious conversation with them. To Carol's point, that's the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard about them not wanting to be in Littleton. And again, they should, the fire department here in this city needs to be honored and remembered. And I appreciate everything they've done.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Elrod?
Thank you, Pat. Ditto what Pat said. I think that that comment was very inappropriate. We're talking about a firefighter association and people and neighbors and that have been part of Littleton Fire for a long time, that even though they're with South Metro, they're still serving our city. So I absolutely agree. This is an organization and people and individuals that should be commemorated. And it's part of our history. It's a big part of our history. So that's the purpose of it, retaining our history.
Thank you. And I have my hand up, and then I'm going to come back to Kelly and for her final comment or for her direction on this. But for me, absolutely, I think what many of you have said, it was great having the fire department as we did. This year, coming budget is not the year to fund it, however. We have other things that we have cut, and here we are looking at putting up a commemorative statue or whatever it may be. I think that this is something to look at here when the economy gets better. But here we are cutting, and then we're going to turn around and put up a monument to somebody or some organization, which I think is a fantastic organization. It's just, it doesn't have to happen this year. It can happen in a year or two when funds are more available. Let's see, I still have Kelly to hear from. That's it.
Pat, if you could work with Cindy, I don't know if you still have that connection.
Kelly, I'm looking for a decision is what we need here.
Okay, sorry. So what I would say is I don't support it right now, but I do support it in the future. And it'd be great if we could figure out how to do that, but not right now.
Yeah. Okay. So Mark, what you have right now, you have 2 members in favor of moving forward, but the rest of it, and that was Councilmember Elrod and Driscoll. But the rest of us, I didn't hear opposed, maybe for one opposed, but the others in favor, but just not this year.
Yeah, I got clear direction, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Okay, Council, we still have a few more to go here. We are on museum fees. This is something that we've discussed from time to time. Mark, do you have a presentation on this item?
Can I ask a question?
If it's about the fire, Ken, we've already moved it. We had a decision on it. So if we can move on.
No, it's not about the decision. Mark said that you can take that forward into another year. So does that go into like a 5-year plan?
I would not put it in the 5-year plan, not until maybe we flesh out some of these potential partnerships here and have a better understanding of where our economy is going. So I would not recommend putting it in at this point.
All right, do you have anything for museum fee to present?
So for the museum fee, some council members had requested some information related to some studies that were done previously, and that was included in your packet. And so we don't have any ask or recommendation. We just wanted to include some history on the when we looked at the museum fee in the past.
Is that it?
Yep, so if you don't have any specific questions, we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, I just want to mention now that Tim, in the past, you had said that we couldn't charge because of the Smithsonian, and then I thought I heard you say something different here recently. So what is the real answer?
There's no problem with charging because of the Smithsonian affiliation. Never has been. So we've always been able to do that. Many Smithsonian affiliates charge admission fee, many do not. So no.
Thank you. Thank you. Council, did any decision on which way you want to go on this? Council Member Elrod.
So do you recommend the fee, Tim, or not?
You know, Karina, I'm pretty agnostic on admission fees. I've worked a lot of places where we've had them and places where we don't. I guess my thought would be, you know, this might not be the year that I would say that we'd go forward with it. And I base that mostly on the fact that with, you know, our families kind of struggling economically, instituting a fee and a market-based fee would be the only way you'd be able to make any kind of revenue stream on this. That's a harder sell probably. I think you also got to deal with sort of with reduced service levels that are going to impact perceived expectations for that fee. You know, obviously it's council's call, but it's a hard one at this point to advocate for that. And I think the big wild card is, you know, that COVID caveat, because you know, most of my peers that are looking at their admission fee numbers next year, you know, we're down about 83% so far this year. That's pretty standard for what museums are seeing right now. So, you know, the first year you impose a fee, you're always going to be down 40 or 50%. If you take that in addition to being down, you know, 75, 80%, which may very well be the case next year if group size restrictions continue, then you're looking at, you know, $20,000 to $27,000 in revenue. It's council's decision, but it's a hard time to do it at this point, I think.
Thank you. That's very fair and reasonable comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll and then me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. Thank you. Very, very reasonable in my opinion too.
Great. And my comment is, yeah, in the past, when I've looked at this, and I think this was Councilmember Millen who brought this up, I too have been in favor of looking at this. I think this is not the year to consider doing any fees. So I'm going to be opposed to it. Anybody else want to comment? We have Councilmember Grove.
I agree with Tim.
What do you agree on?
That we not charge a fee this year.
Thank you.
I just like hearing someone agree with me, so thank you.
Who knows what that is? Yeah. Okay, Councilmember Milliman.
I agree with Tim too.
What is your decision?
No fee this year.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, no fee.
We have a Councilmember Elrod.
I agreed with Tim. No fee.
No fee. We have Councilmember Fay.
No fee.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, Tim, thanks again for getting together with me on short notice to talk about this today. I agree with Tim that we should not impose a fee this year.
Yeah, it's definitely not here. So Mark, I think you have your direction on that council does not want to see a fee this coming year.
I got it, Mayor. Thank you, council.
Right. We're moving right along. We still have 3 more to go, council. We are now on the grants, the neighborhood partnership grants. Mark?
So, sorry, this was added to the parking lot as well. Staff did recommend a service level reduction for 2021. We did reduce this line item by $40,000 in 2020, and we recommend continuing this through 2021. There's 2 types of grants. There's small grants that are available up to $500 related to neighborhood engagement and interactions. And then there's large grants for organizations up to $10,000 to improve common areas and shared community spaces. And this is in response to the COVID pandemic, limiting the social distancing that this would have benefited.
Okay, so our total amount for this coming year is being proposed as what amount?
So we propose to reduce it by 40,000 in total.
So the total amount is what again?
Yep, let me find that for you.
And council, get your questions ready, if any.
Council, this is Ryan Thompson. I believe Tiffany, that's 20,000 remaining. It was 60,000 before it was cut this year.
Yeah.
So I believe next year would leave 20,000 remaining.
That's correct.
So into year 21, it'll be the total budget is 21,000. Is that correct?
20,000.
20,000. All right, cool. All right, thank you. We'll move on to Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, Mayor. Tiffany, what percentage of that 40,000 would be awardable to the big organizations? That's a $10,000 award, and what percentage is going to go to $500 awards?
Yeah, I think I'll let maybe Ryan address that.
Sure. Good evening, Council, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The way it had been split up in the past was 40,000 was allocated for $500 increments, and then 20,000 was allocated for the large grants. This last year in 2019, we did 2 large grants, and those equaled out to about $10,000 each. And then we did about 100 plus, I don't have the number right in front of me, of the small grants of $500 each to cover the 40,000.
So what would it be this year or with this budget?
That's really what we're looking at council for this evening to decide. You know, I know we have a couple of the large grants, people in line that have been waiting that weren't able to get in 2019, that we're waiting this year to get in for small grants. So we have a couple lined up to go for that, the large grant money right off the bat. You know, again, it's up to council how they'd like to spend that.
Yeah, I guess I'll just go since
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I've experienced the events that $500 puts together, and I think they're pretty extraordinary in the amount of community that they create. So I'm in favor of doing what staff's proposing. I think I'd like to see 3/4 go to the small grants and maybe just one big grant for the year.
Thank you. Councilmember Milliman.
I'm going to be the party pooper because I almost think it should be the opposite, the reverse, that the more money should go to the larger grants and less to the community grants because of social distancing requirements and because of COVID. You can't, I know that our neighborhood use that grant a couple of years ago, and there was definitely more than 25 people, you know, that got together for that community event. So I don't know. Ryan, what do you think about that?
I think it's a really tough decision to make for council to make. The benefits of the community engagement are huge, but the question is, are we going to be able to gather in those types of settings? And exactly. as a city, do we want to promote those types of settings? So I think that's part of the reason that we went to the $20,000 allocation and really didn't specify, because, you know, come January, if everybody's got a vaccination and we are able to gather in large groups, let's shift that allocation more towards the $500 deals. But if we find out by March of next year that, and we don't typically roll out the grant program until the 1st of April, if we find out in March that we're still not going to be able to social distance, but we have some communities that would really take advantage of that large grant money, then I think we'd be able to kind of tip the scale that way. So, you know, I think this might be something that we wait to kind of see how next year shapes out and how we allocate that 20,000.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Kelly, where do you stand?
Can we be fluid then if, depending on, you know, what goes on with the virus and the vaccine, you know, the vaccine and all, can we be a little fluid and how those monies get allocated based on what's going on with COVID?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, but we're trying to make the budget, and we got to make a decision. That's what the issue is we council has to make a direction on this.
But Ryan and Kelly raised pretty good points that I hadn't considered. Is it possible, if council wants to support this generally, that we make it a proviso and revisit it in March if we're not going to implement the grants until April?
Mark, I know you want to chime in.
I was going to suggest something just like what the pro tem here shared. My suggestion is that we go ahead and allocate the 20,000 here. And then we can, since we don't really implement until later in the year, to me, this is a perfect one for us to reevaluate here in that, you know, early second quarter when we have a better idea what's going on here financially. And maybe we can take some applications and report back to council kind of where we're at. If we want to increase this is not a very large line item. I think if we have the interest and we see that the forecast with COVID looks a little bit brighter, then maybe council may want to allocate a little bit more funding regardless of where we're at financially.
Good point. Council member Elrod, then me.
I'm in support of this. I think this, it just builds good community, and it's been something that really all of our citizens have spoken of so highly. I really value this, and I think Ryan and staff has done a good job this year saying no, we can't do it. So I leave to the discretion of what is truly possible or not possible. I don't know that we can decide that today. I don't know that we can decide that a month from now or even 6 months from now. I think the point is, these neighborhood grants do build community, and who knows, they may build community in a different way. It may not be the ice cream social, it might be something different. So I'm supportive of this. I don't think we have to.
Yeah, thank you. So I put you down as a yes, as proposed. And I'm up next. And yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward with this, giving you direction to move forward with what you have proposed. It is a great program for all neighborhoods throughout the whole city. But this coming year, we just don't know what to do. And I think promoting large gatherings is probably not the way we want to go for the upcoming year. And I think, as you just said, Mark, if at some point we decide we want to add some more money to it, I'm sure there's some discretionary money we can take from probably Tim, as we do every year. So cool. All right. Councilmember Grove?
I support it as recommended for the reasons other council members have already stated.
All right. Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes. No speech needed. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Fay.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Milliman. Okay, so Mark, I think you have your direction as proposed from all council members.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
All right, great. So we have 2 more items. Print shop came up as a discussion item.
So again, we just provided some informational data related to our print shop, our in-house services versus our outsourcing. Again, this is just information for you. If you have any specific questions, Kelly is here with us as well.
And also Mark Ralph, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just add a little bit more. We didn't anticipate any kind of a policy question around this. The question came up, which is a very legitimate question, about what is it that we actually outsource or contract. And as you can see from the slide here, you can see we have a pretty substantial amount of that actually is contracted.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Council. So Mark, you don't need any direction from us on this?
Not unless council has some other issue they want to raise.
Council, was there any other questions? We only have one more item, if so. Okay, let's move on to that last item, which is open space.
Policy questions. Right?
I thought we had open space as number 7 on that South Suburban Park and Recs District. What did we have? Yeah, I have open space, recreation, and water resources update is what I had actually.
I think Keith's pretty well gone over that, yeah.
Was that the one? Was that the one you were going over, Keith, earlier? Because this has bicycle and everything else in it.
Yeah, it's
so
all
that was it. Oh, good. So we don't have to cover that. All right. So what is our? How many more items we have there?
So there was a request to kind of review the policy questions. We don't have very many this year just due to the financial constraints. So do we want to just quickly go through and kind of recap?
If we can do it quickly, that'd be great.
Well, I said 2 minutes earlier, so don't trust me.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
We did have 7 policy questions, 7 or 9, I can't remember exactly now. So the first one is related to the comprehensive strategic initiatives. This is one for business plans or downtown plans, some other plans that we might have within the city. Again, this is one that we recommended to be under a budget proviso of $100,000. I'm just going to go through them if you want me to stop.
Just keep rolling. Keep rolling. We'll interrupt you if a hand comes up.
All right. The second one was related to the revision of the codes to include the ULUC. This was for $247,252. This is continuing plans related to the comp plan, the TMP plan, and items like that. The next one is ballot polling and public education. So if council were to decide to have a ballot question in 2021, we would need to do some polling and some education on that. At the last meeting, we did add a budget proviso as recommended by council for that policy question. The fourth one is related to storm drainage fee. We talked about this earlier this evening, an increase of $19.09 annually for single family residents. The fifth one that we talked about in a previous meeting was related to the omnibus program. This was a cost of $207,940. However, we did recommend we put this under a budget proviso, and staff will bring more information in the future. The sixth one is related to employee compensation and benefits. This is the largest policy question asked in any given year. It's about $1 million, and this is related to employee compensation and health insurance, dental, and additional benefits provided to employees. Number 7 was related to the local partnership funding. This is what we talked about this evening, and council did support $65,000. And number 8 and 9 are specifically related to the open space fund in South Platte Park and South Suburban. Both of these are under budget provisos because they are housed primarily in the open space fund. And those are the only policy questions that we proposed in 2021 to council.
Great. Thank you very much, Tiffany.
Sure.
All right, council, that's if there's no questions, I don't see any questions, so we're going to keep moving. Mark, I know that you want to cover some capital project funds, sales tax issues, business improvement. Do you want to still do that tonight?
Let's, if I may, Tiffany, can you go back to the original slide there that had the agenda? And I think let's I'm going to propose something here to simplify this to see if council's comfortable. We certainly can go back and talk about the detail, but we had, I believe, this is the original agenda.
The additional discussion points?
Right, exactly.
Sorry, my apologies. There we go.
There you go.
So here's my suggestion, council. I think the capital projects fund, I think we all agree, definitely needs some special attention. And my suggestion is that we go ahead and look at this. We adopt basically the plan that has been proposed. We all recognize there's some shortcomings in there across the board, but I think we're going to have to take up this issue here over the next several months. And whether or not a sales tax increase is part of that conversation or not, I would ask that council at least be open to that conversation and that we play this out. And hopefully by the 1st of February might be a milestone for which the council would have more information and can make a decision about where we go with this. It is clearly an issue that we must address, in my opinion. And we're not going to solve that necessarily tonight, but I'm hoping that we could have consensus about discussing this over the next several months.
Agree.
So I just want to make sure council's comfortable with that, and
yeah,
I would put in a schedule here in the coming weeks here to how we might address that.
I think that would be great to hear from in a few weeks, unless council has any opposition to that thinking. I think that's a great way to go. I don't see anybody. Councilmember Elrod.
They said in the next several months, so we are in September. So you're essentially saying during our retreat, which I think is a perfect time because we can really dedicate. So is that what you're envisioning?
That's fine. Yes,
Next month or the month after that. Okay, just wanted to confirm that. Okay.
Yes. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, I would say let's address this sooner. I mean, I want this on the ballot next year. This is nothing I want to push off to 2022. So the sooner we can have this conversation.
Oh, Council, looks like he froze up on us again. Mark, when would be the soonest you would want to bring it to council so we can discuss it?
Well, I think we've had a little bit of a discussion internally with staff here, but I think that I want to make sure that I am sensitive to the timing. So if the council is interested in looking at 2021, that we have plenty of time to manage that. And so to me, the retreat, the 1st of February, quite honestly, is the latest date. It may be the most appropriate, but at some point I got to make sure that you have enough information to make that decision.
Yeah. Councilmember Driscoll, I'm sorry, Mark, I overspoke. You had cut out on us before, Patrick. Yep. Did you get what you were hoping for?
Yeah. No, I agree with Mark, but.
Oh, did you mute yourself by chance? Oh, he's got a bad line tonight, it sounds like. So council, does that sound like a good plan? Is anybody opposed to it? Doesn't look like it. Okay, cool. Thank you, Mark.
The next piece that we had on the other issues list is the incentives for a potential DDA and a bid. And those numbers are not within the budget currently. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tiffany.
That's correct.
And so I do want some direction from council, and we did have a couple of specific recommendations with that. And Tiffany, can you go through the detail?
Yep. Yeah, so staff was recommending that we add $10,000 to the 2021 budget for marketing efforts related to these potential types of organizations. And then in 2022, in our 5-year plan, we would provide some funding related to a contract executive director. And we suggested $60,000 related to that.
And Mayor,
so other than the 10,000, the 60,000 is not a hard number at this point. Is that correct?
Correct. It's just an estimate. And if the council's comfortable with this, we'll certainly put it in the 2021 budget for marketing issues. But this is another one where I believe that we can come back to you here in the short term and provide you some kind of an approach and strategy of how to move this issue forward. As we all know, this is about self-determination of the property owners and merchants, residents of downtown, and they are the ones that have to vote on this. But I believe we can provide some incentives here to kind of move this forward. We've had plenty of discussion about why we want to do this. To me, is probably several reasons, one of which is to address a couple of issues that I think we're identifying through the ULUC process. Parking. I think parking could definitely be an issue that a DDA or a bid could assist us with. I do think it's how we manage special events. I think we've all kind of wrestled with weekends on Main Street, and I think we're looking for a different way to kind of move special events through the downtown differently. And I think that that's another opportunity for which we need to highlight. One of the other issues that we can't lose sight of is Denver Water. They have a project here that's going to eventually tear up all of Main Street in a good portion of Alamo. And we can put them off for so long, but in my opinion, we really need to have a plan for what we want to do once they come through there. What is it we're going to put back? And to me, that is another perfect example of what a DDA and a bid could assist us with. The city is not in a position to do this all. We can't afford it. We must have partners in this to somehow create a different way to tackle some of these really tough issues. Parking alone is something that we cannot solve by ourselves. And so that's my proposal, is that we try to put these incentives and then we come back with a plan about how we move this forward here. And hopefully council in our downtown will embrace that and we'll have some success.
So what you're asking for right now is put 10,000 into the budget for 21, and then pencil in 60,000 for 22.
Correct.
All right. Councilmember Elrod, then Milliman.
No, I'm not ready to make that decision now. It's not clear to me what the 10,000 for marketing is. So I couldn't support it at this time.
Okay, I'll put you down as a no.
We certainly could put a proviso on that, and I have to be honest, we don't necessarily understand what that is either. It's just a placeholder. We just recognize that some type of communication is probably going to be necessary.
Great, thank you. Then Councilmember Millen's up.
I support it because I think we needed DDA like 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So I think it's super important, and I trust cities to be able to take that 10,000 and do what they need to do to market the efforts to get this going. And I hope it happens quicker than 2022, personally.
So if I heard you right, then you're okay with the 10,000. Thank you. Councilmember Grove? You are muted.
I support staff's recommendation and the $10,000.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, let's go Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, I support it.
Thank you. Councilmember Elrod's already chimed in. Councilmember Fay.
Opposed to this. I like the idea very much of having a DDA or a bid. I don't think that the current candidates have shown any interest in actually serving the city. I think we're trying to go forward with this with the wrong people. And I think our chances of succeeding are really low. So I am not in favor.
You're opposed.
I'm opposed.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
I think to a certain extent, I share Karina's concerns, but I'm at a point where I'm wanting to take a leap of faith and try to do something to get a DDA or bid happening. So I'm in support of it.
Yeah, as well as I. It's time that we got to get something going to get this thing to happen. So I believe you have your direction on that from council, with Councilmember Elrod and Fay being opposed to it, but the rest of us are give that direction to go forward.
All right, thank you, Council. And the last issue is that we had on the list was just simply the concept of a 2021 special appropriation, just getting some sales tax receipts, some monthly updates behind us. And so we have a better idea where the economy is going. I'm assuming the council's comfortable with that approach. I'm not sure exactly when that might happen, but I'm guessing sometime in the second quarter.
For the appropriations.
Yeah.
That's not unusual. That's about when we do it anyway, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I think in this case, we may have some discussion that leads up to that, but I think it's the second quarter is when I see probably some decisions could be made, if that seems fair.
Great. Council, any questions? All right, so I don't think you're looking for any direction on that particular item, are you? No,
unless it was another thought, but I hope that makes sense here, just based on where we're at financially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I don't think it's that unusual anyway, but if you have no other items, that was great. Council, we got it through. it. I think with that, we'll go to the city manager. Do you have any report?
I do not, Mayor. That's nothing for this evening.
Okay. City attorney.
No, you can just look to my my title on there. I don't have anything. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I just want to remind council, because next Tuesday is the 5th Tuesday, and because of what we just got done tonight, we do not have a meeting next Tuesday. Woo-hoo. That's worth dancing for, right there. So I think our next meeting will be October 6th. All right. So until then, you all have a good night. It is now 9:39, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.